And sometimes there's more than what I signed up for. I'll tell you that right now. I'm like, wait a second, what the heck did I sign up for here? Am I really signed up for this? In the summer of 2001, if you go back to that time frame, nobody's thinking about going to Afghanistan. F it, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. I remember telling myself, why me? What did I live in this guy next to me did? I don't know if.
Well, I mean, everyone has a story. This is yours.
And you see, I see a triple amputee hobbling down the hallway. This one was very personal to me. There was an RPG. There was another RPG. I can still remember the round hitting the front dashboard. Whack! And I picked Joe up, and that bomb came in so fast. Okay, this bad thing happened. Heck, we almost killed Karzai. It feels like, it sounds weird to say this. It feels like there's this force field around me. Like, wait a second, they're right down the street from the Pakistani military county the whole time. What the heck is going on here? And they're like, what are you doing here? Who the heck are you? It was a friendly fire incident. I don't like the term. There's no such thing as friendly fire. It's all bad. Okay. I've always professed this. You can never, ever, 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 ever have enough. He kind of put me in like, I look at his eye and I can't keep my eyes off him. He has me completely locked up and he's just looking at me. And I can remember almost being in this, like, and I kind of had to shake, wake up, what the hell's going on? You just feel this huge sense of remembering.
Welcome, everyone, to the Not A Grayman Podcast. I'm so honored to have with me today Don Parnell Jr., the former chief of Ground Branch. He's led some of the CIA's most sensitive ground operations in Afghanistan and Iraq during the global war on terror. His valor and his heroism have earned him the Distinguished Intelligence Cross, the highest award for bravery that the CIA gives out. And there's only been 39, I believe, that have been awarded. He's a father, he's a grandfather. He is now retired from the CIA, but we'll learn a lot about his background, his legacy, and of course his leadership, because so much happened under his watch. Don, thank you so much.
Glad to join you today. It's fantastic. Literally looking forward to this.
You've now stepped out of the shadows.
Yeah, you can say that. Yes, it's true. It's been kind of difficult to do that. I've been retired almost 5 years come July. So it's definitely a change.
Yeah.
You don't completely come out of the shadows, but come out a little bit.
I heard someone say that actually when I asked the question about like coming out of the shadows, and they're like, well, sometimes we go back into the shadows.
That's true. That's true. When you leave the organization, it's just so much a part of who you are and what you've done, especially, you spent almost 25 years there. It's hard to break some of those old habits.
Understandably. So we'll get into the 25 years of your service, but I'd love to understand or help the viewer understand who is Don Parnell Jr. And, I love the oil and gas. And so tell us a little about your upbringing.
Yeah, I don't like to think I'm not a very complicated person. I don't know. My great parents, Don and Vina. My dad passed away about a year and a half ago, but my dad's from Oklahoma, grew up there, Oklahoma and North Texas area, and my mother's Korean. So they met in the late 50s, early 60s. I say early 60s, real early 60s. And I popped out a few years later. So I'm a multiracial guy. My mom being Korean and my dad being just, Scottish, Irish, English descent.
Okie from Skokie.
Okie from Muskogee, yeah, that's one term we always use with him. So, that was great for 7 years. It was just me, and then 7 years after I was born, I found out my mom had brought home twin girls, so I have twin sisters, Kim and Karen. And then subsequent to that, I had a great childhood, great parents, two of the best parents that you could ever ask for. Moved around a little bit. We were in Oklahoma for a while. That's where I was born. And then we lived in New York. And then we lived in the suburbs of New York City in White Plains for some of my elementary school and early middle school. And then my dad worked in the oil business. Primarily, he worked for Texaco Oil. So he did that for 30 plus years.
Go Texaco.
Yeah. For those, I don't even know if Texaco
it's not even around anymore. No, it's been
So I always thought that's what I was going to do when I grew up. I was going to be an oil man. He was actually a landman. He started out as a landman. And so we moved up to New York. Then we moved to Africa for a year. We lived in Nigeria when I was in the 6th grade. That really expanded my world as a young boy to live in a country like Lagos, a place like Lagos, Nigeria. Moved back to New York, and then between my 7th and 8th grade years, we moved to Fort Worth, Texas. My dad got a new job with a different oil company in Texas, and we moved down there. So, rest of my 8th grade year, all my high school and college was all in Texas. So I've always kind of considered now Texas kind of be my home in some respects, especially the Fort Worth area. Though I haven't lived there much in the last 35, 40 years. I've had a few years here and there, but and it just really had two fantastic supportive parents and very traditional family in that regard. My dad worked, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, supported us in everything that we always did. Was a big athlete, mostly the football and baseball. I was very big in that. Growing up, and then in high school, and I even played college football. Had some success at that. So I, the athletic field probably taught me as much as I learned or even more so than I ever learned in the classroom. I'll tell you that right now. The hard work, determination, teamwork, a lot of your basic leadership traits and principles, learned a lot on the football gridiron. First, we were working. I had the advantage of having some amazing coaches and just amazing support from my parents and from my sisters. So I went to college in a small school in north of Dallas called Austin College. It's a small liberal arts school. It was NAIA division back then. Now it's Division III, but Division III-like school, very small. Great time. Absolutely the best decision I ever made in my life was to go to school there and play football. I went with my wife, Susan. We met a couple of years in school. And then, I was okay in the classroom, nothing fantastic. Just kind of middle of the road. The athletic side of me, big into football, obviously, and baseball. I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I got this inkling my junior year in college to take a look at the Marines. And I ended up going to Marine Officer Candidate School, Marine OCS, between the summer of my junior and senior year in college. It's called the PLC, Platoon Leaders Course, PLC Combined Program. I think it's still called that. And basically, it was 10 weeks of, Officer Candidate School boot camp in Quantico. Matter of fact, that was 43 years ago right now. I was there. Yeah, June of 1982. I got my math right on that one. So I did that. It was extremely challenging. Went right back. 2 days later, I reported to football camp, started school for my senior year. Very successful senior year. Our junior year, we had won our division's national championship in football in 1981. So a lot of success on the gridiron. And a lot of great friendships came out of that. Obviously, a lot of lessons learned on the value of leadership lessons, life lessons in some respects. It really I didn't know this at the time because I was just a young man, but it really kind of set those building blocks, as you say, for the rest of your life. I decided to join the Marine Corps. Then I basically went back for my senior year of college, and I went back. And then when I graduated, since I graduated from OCS the previous summer, and I graduated from college, I could become a commission as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. And I never really looked at any of the other services, not so much because I was so sold on the Marines, but the Marines just seemed to have what I was looking for, even though I didn't know what I was really looking for. I was looking for a challenge. I kind of said to myself, if I can cut it as a Marine officer, and I'll probably do okay in anything else. So the challenge was pretty immense for me back then, looking back on those days as a 21-year-old kid when I got out of college. So I decided to join the Marine Corps. And the building blocks, if I didn't, I always say this, if I wasn't the athlete and I didn't play high school, I didn't play college football, I probably never would have joined the Marine Corps. They kind of built on each other for me.
Really?
Yeah, it really did build on each other for me. And it just did. And so I joined the Marine Corps, and as all young lieutenants do when they're commissioned in the Marine Corps, you go to the basic school. And at the basic school, I originally joined the Marine Corps. I thought I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I still do find helicopters to be very fascinating.
Yeah.
But I found out during my my aviation physical that I didn't have the eyesight. I had astigmatism, and I couldn't fly. I wasn't qualified medically. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm still going to join the Marines. So you go to the basic school, and there you depend upon how well you do there. You put in for your military occupational specialty, your MOS. I decided I wanted to be a grunt, an infantry officer, the backbone of the Marine Corps. And everything in the Marine Corps is designed on supporting your riflemen, your Marine infantrymen on the ground. Mm-hmm. And unbelievable challenge. I was fortunate enough to get that MOS. I then went to the infantry officers course for my MOS right there in Quantico, and then I kicked out to the Fleet Marine Forces as a brand new minted second lieutenant, and just next thing I know, I'm in sailing around a big gray boat, with an amphibious task force around the Western Pacific, and I was originally based out of Camp Pendleton, and it was just fantastic. It was a great experience. Absolutely just the best decision I had ever made. Very hard, very challenging, extremely difficult at times. Obviously, you don't join the Marines half-heartedly. You definitely don't become a Marine officer half-heartedly. You got to really want it. The challenges were immense. Absolutely met friendships for life. We still get together. Some of my old buds, we still get together all the time. 30, 40 years, we've known each other, and really, it was one of the best things that I ever did, was join the Marines. And it became, I've talked to a lot of other, whether it's World War II vets, Vietnam vets, or some of the old timers, and even some famous people, and they've done all these amazing things in their life. They just want to be remembered for being a United States Marine, and there's a lot of truth to that. And so I was, I don't know, they brainwashed me or whatever, but I completely bought into the whole brainwashing piece for the Corps and the Marine Corps. It really turned a boy into a man for me.
Interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, you're in those developing years, 18 to 25, you really develop, but that really sped things up for me significantly.
Were you because you were already in team sports and very active in that space, but what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome when you were joining? Also, I was curious, do you have a background with family serving in the Marines, or was that
no.
black sheep of the family?
I'm the walking example that I knew no, but it's because of where my parents were born and my grandparents were born. Nobody in my family had ever been in the military, immediate family, or even my grandparents had been in the military. The only Marines I'd ever seen in uniform were my recruiter.
Really?
Yeah. And so the first time I saw anybody besides my recruiter was when I showed up at OCS in uniform. So I didn't know the difference between a corporal and a captain. I was as green as they came. That was it. And I do like the simple things, the simplicity of joining the service. And my sister's son just recently joined the Army, and he's in boot camp right now. And I told him what I liked so much about the simplicity when I joined the Marine Corps is that show up, they'll teach you what you have to do, they'll feed you, they'll take care of you, and do what they say, and learn what you can, and it'll all come at you. Sometimes it comes at you pretty fast, but you got to adapt and overcome. And I don't know, I love that. I love that idea of and the challenge. The challenges were significant. I mean, it was a different time then. This was the early 80s, and I mean, it was, we weren't involved in a major conflict, and it wasn't overly popular at that time. I shouldn't know popular is the right word, but there just wasn't a lot of people joining the military. But, the Reagan eras came on. That was during the Reagan era, so they were building up the military. And so, but I had no influences on me at all.
Interesting.
None at all. I learned about the program when I was in college through my good buddy, Gene Snelson. Gene's going to love this because I just mentioned his name. Hi,
Gene.
And we were sitting around the dorm room, and he's telling me about this Marine officer program. He was interested in, and he had a fraternity brother of his that had just gone through the program the previous summer. I said, that sounds interesting. So we went over and talked to this guy, and we spent an hour or so talking about the program, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool. So then I got the recruiter's name from him, and Gene didn't end up following that path, but I may never even heard. I walked in the recruiter's office and said, hey, I'm sitting here looking at officer programs, and they first wanted me to enlist, and I said, no, I want to see what the officer programs are first. And then I just, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated college. I thought it was going to be another thing that played into it. Like I said, my dad was a landman. He was in the oil business. And the oil glut hit in the early 80s. And at that time, he had kind of gone out on his own, and he had a small exploration company based out of Fort Worth. And my thought was, because I had done some work for him the previous summers with his company and following one of his landmen around West Texas. And I thought that's what I want to do. I'm going to go be a landman, and I'm going to go work in the oil business in Texas. But because of the oil glut, and there wasn't a lot of exploration going on at the time, they went in a short period of time where they couldn't find an oil rig to drill to have an oil rig sitting around, because the ebbs and flows of the oil business. And that was my original plan. Mm-hmm. And of course, it just timed me. It's like, okay, I'm going to go join the Marines.
Wow. So I'm curious about something. Growing up, you kind of had that third culture kid experience living in Nigeria, presumably other places as well. Were you hearing stories about some of the geopolitics at the time growing up, that may have sparked an interest for you to play something in a global affairs type of role?
It actually did. It went back, first of all, when we moved to Nigeria when I was in the 6th grade, my world opened up. I mean, of course, I'm only in the 6th grade, but we had lived in New York. We moved from Oklahoma to New York. And now we're overseas, and we're going. Obviously we stopped to Europe a couple times, and I'm seeing a complete. Now we're in Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah, Nigeria back in those days
back
too.
In those days, like 1972. This is pretty 72, 70. I think of 72. Let's get the years mixed up. It's pretty eye-opening, as you can imagine, living in Lagos there and going to the American International School, which was right in the middle of an army base, on Nigerian army base. Yeah, we lived in a small compound with somebody that worked at the U.S. Embassy there in Lagos. It really expanded my horizons, and we did some more traveling on the way back through Europe. So I got to see stuff outside the United States. And then my mother is a fascinating story. She was actually born in Shanghai, China, because they were exiled from Korea, the peninsula, during the Second World War. And then they got moved. They went back to the peninsula, back to Korea after the war. And then, of course, the Korean War happened, and she's only a young teenager at that time. And my mother's mother, my grandmother, she got remarried to an American citizen who worked for the State Department. And so then my mom ended up kind of growing up, and I think she ended up going to high school. No, she did. I think she did go to high school in Karachi, Pakistan, at the American International School.
Nice.
And so she then, since 1958 or 59, it's time for her to go to college. And my mother was, she's an amazing person. She was a beauty queen. Mm. She was actually in a number of contests. She was gifted talently musically, as a singer, an amazing voice. And she was also a elite athlete. She actually swam in the Asian Games as a swimmer.
Wow.
Fascinating stuff. And then her mother, my grandmother, Esther, who passed about 30 plus years ago, was really she was just a little 5 foot tall. My grandmother, went through the Second World War, and she had lived some of the atrocities of the Japanese forces and stuff like that. She always, it's funny, after the war and all through till the rest of her life, she always drove I used to give her a hard time because she either drove a Honda or Toyota. And she goes, she always, you could tell her blood would boil talk about the war, especially the Japanese. And I can understandably so.
Yeah.
Some of these things,
why are you
some of the stuff she went through, and I never got the whole story from her, but some of the stuff she went through was pretty bad. And so she goes, "But they make a great car." She would say that. And a lot of I like to think that a lot of that, especially from my grandma and my mom, was kind of passed on to me. That grit and that determination, that drive. You get a little bit from both your parents and your grandparents, I think. So having kind of multicultural, diverse background, having a mother that's, born in China, but actually Korean heritage. It's different. There's no doubt about it. Especially this is back in the 60s and 70s. So when things weren't quite as diverse in our country as they are now. And so that I think that played a role in it. I remember I was 15 years old, and it was Christmas time. And it was about 10 Christmas break time. It was about school just got out. We're getting out soon, and we're in dinner. My dad comes in, and my dad just at that time was working for a company that was doing a lot of work in the Middle East, and he was traveling to and from Tel Aviv a tremendous amount of time. And we're sitting at dinner, and he comes in, he takes my passport and an airline ticket, back when you actually had airline tickets, and he throws it on the table, and he throws it with like $300 or $400 of cash, which was a lot of money back for me.
In the 80s, yeah.
He goes, and he throws this package down. He had this, this big, thick package, and he goes, I need that package in Tel Aviv in 3 days. And I don't want to fly back to Tel Aviv for the 15th time in the last 6 months. I want you to take it for me. And this is leading up. This is we're like 10 days out from Christmas, just maybe a week out.
Okay.
1970, I think 75, maybe 76. Christmas 76.
Wow.
And so, we had the whole plane hijackings and all that stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit different world back then. And I said, and my mom thought, you gotta be kidding me. He's only 15 years old. You want to fly him all the way to Tel Aviv? So I did it. Yeah, he did it.
Amazing.
And I jumped on, I remember,
what an amazing responsibility to give you.
It's just been open for a couple of years. I jumped on Braniff Airlines and flew to New York.
Wow. Into
Kennedy, and in exchange went to get on El Al Airlines. Some amazing security then.
Dude, I'm getting
your background. And
I'm realizing how
it's 15 years old. So I go to this scrutiny, so you go up to Kennedy, and you go to the El Al terminal then, and it was just a separate terminal. And so they take every passenger into this little curtained off room, and they go through your luggage.
Yeah.
They go through everything and ask you all these questions. I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
I had this letter from my dad's company saying, hey, this is what I'm doing.
But you don't have a chaperone then, just you. You could travel independently at 15.
Okay, he goes, I'd done some traveling with the family in Europe, when we lived in Africa and stuff like that. So he goes, you can figure this stuff out. And then so he gives me all these specific instructions. I get through the security, I get on the air flight, I fly all the way to Tel Aviv nonstop. And this is the first time, the first time I ever saw soldiers with guns was when we were in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So I get in Ben Gurion Airport, and, things are crazy. I just said, you expect it to be. And he goes, it's going to be a little bit like when you got, when we were here, remember that happened, that happened. I'm like, okay. So it took me forever to get through the security and customs and immigration. And I found my bag, and he goes, take a $20 bill, walk out to the little taxi stand, wave it in the guy's face and say, Tel Aviv Hilton. So I walk out, and you know how it is when you leave the security area of the airports, and you go out, and things are just massively crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I did Tel Aviv Hilton. First mistake I made is I sat in the front seat of the taxi. Now off we go.
That was you adulting.
Yeah, it's me adulting. So off we go, and I was like, this is a mistake. And so and this guy's talking to me about why Jimmy Carter's our president, and why did you elect a peanut farmer, and all this geopolitical stuff. And I'm like,
yeah,
I wouldn't even know what to vote, and I said, okay, we're going down all these back roads and back ways, and then he stops and picks somebody up, and I got this other guy in the back seat, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And then I'm like, all right, I don't know what's going to happen here. About 45 minutes later, he drops the other guy off somewhere. Okay, nothing happens there. We come around the corner, and I can see Hilton, Tel Aviv Hilton.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh. So he was legit. I get there, I deliver the package, and the most interesting part of the trip is that the company my dad was associated with over there, the manager of the Tel Aviv office had a son who was a couple years older than me. He was 17, and because of conscription, they all go into the army. And so he was about ready to start his military service. We had a little bit of a break before he started. And he took me, we spent the next 2 days, just he and I, he's 17, I'm 15, driving me around Israel. You talk about eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just really expanded my horizons beyond anything. It really, took me everywhere. 2 days. You can go everywhere in 2 days.
Yeah.
And we're picking
it's like
up
the size of Jersey, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. We're picking up, you pick up Israeli military personnel and they thumb rides to the next town or whatever. And so we always had somebody else in the car with that. That's just what you did there.
Yeah, totally normal.
Totally normal. Really eye-opening. Came back got home like the day before Christmas, and then we had Christmas that year. Wow. And that experience at 15 was absolutely mind-blowing to me. That and living in Nigeria and then doing a little bit of traveling around Europe really blew my doors off as far as, okay, there's a whole other world out there. And I've only had a very limited exposure to it. And so subsequently, that leads on to, my interest in working for the agency years later. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. And so when I got in the Marine Corps, our deployments were in the Western Pacific. So I went to Asia a number of different times when I was in the Marine Corps. Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Thailand, those places. I even, went back to Korea and I saw some of my distant relatives and stuff like that when I was in the Marine Corps. So that was fascinating and opening up the aperture that I had as far as, there's more to the world than Fort Worth, Texas and Tulsa, Oklahoma and New York City. And when we lived there as a child. So,
isn't
that really expanded my horizons significantly. And so back I'm in the Marine Corps, I actually, I ended up spending 11 years on active duty. But it was a different time and era. We had Reagan came out and then Bush was in for one term and then Clinton shows up in the 90s. And then we had this big, huge, massive drawdown. And while I was in the Marine, I got to do some amazing stuff that I never thought I was going to be able to do between my tours as a platoon commander and a company commander in the infantry. When I just became a newly minted captain in the Marines, I had the opportunity to go fly backseat in an aircraft called the OV-10 Bronco. They had a program then, went back to the Vietnam era, called the Air Lives Over program. They would put a combat arms officer in the backseat of an OV-10 Bronco, which is a twin tail boom turboprop light attack forward air control aircraft, Vietnam era aircraft. They flew up from the 60s up through the mid-90s. So I have quite a few hours in that. So I was able to still kind of scratch that itch, that aviation itch that I had when I wanted to join the Marine Corps as a helicopter pilot. So I was able to kind of scratch that itch for 3 years. It was fascinating. Yep. Some of those guys are still some of my closest friends today. And then went back. I was a company commander in the Marines. I was out in Hawaii with 3rd Marines, and then I kind of got to what I call a Y in the road. I decided to go ahead and take some of the incentives they had to get out. It was a different time then. You had it was 93 ish. I ended up getting out in 94. And so I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do next. I was thinking about graduate school. It all kind of happened pretty quickly because of the incentives they were offering. He had to act pretty quick. We had already had our first child out in Hawaii, Allie. She was born out there so we had a little one. So we picked up and I moved back to my home record, back to Fort Worth. And when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a policeman. I always wanted to be a fireman. My kid does. I don't know, maybe I like kid stuff.
Right.
I always wanted to.
Yeah.
So I had this plan. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go become a cop, and then I'm going to become a volunteer fireman, and kind of I meshed the two together. So I went to police academy. I was going to go. I ended up going to the Arlington, Texas Police Academy, which is the city right in between Dallas and Fort Worth. It's now where the Texas Rangers and the Dallas Cowboys play. Absolutely loved every minute of that.
Nice.
I went through the academy, went through field training. I was on the streets for a very short period of time. During that time frame, I had started applying, but even before when I got out of the Marine Corps, sending resume and cover letters to all the three-letter acronyms, and talking to here and talking to there. It's funny. I didn't know half the things I probably should have known. I didn't really prepare myself that well. But I'm on the streets as a cop, where life is great. We're living in Fort Worth. I really found that I truly, truly enjoyed the limited time I was on the streets, being on patrol.
What were your favorite things about that?
What the interesting thing about it, is that every day literally you had no idea what you were going to expect today. I worked the evening shift from 3 to 11, 5 days a week. And sometimes your shift would bleed over a few extra hours, stuff like that. I worked Wednesday through Sunday, my 5 days, and Monday and Tuesday off. And you rolled in, and when you checked in the service with your unit, we ran single-man units. So it could be the most boring day of the year, of the week, or it could, in 5 minutes from now, you could be running code and being into some sort of really dangerous or critical situation that it just changes just like that.
Were you ever like in a street battle?
No, I never fired my weapon. Most cops don't. And I was only for a short period of time. I pulled it out many times and had my share of a couple little rough points here and there. I mean, things you're going to run into, especially being a rookie. When I left the department, I still had rookie-itis, they call it. I literally couldn't wait to go to work every day.
Yeah.
That was going to eventually
wear off.
I understood that. I can remember waking up my days off from Monday and Tuesday. I waking up one Monday morning and I was getting ready, and for some reason I had lost track of the days, and I'm like, oh shit, man, I don't get to go to work today. As I just couldn't get enough of it. And you really saw, I almost stayed a cop. I was about this close. I mean, I was ever so close, because during this whole process, I'm going through all the interviews and exams and stuff and stuff like that with the agency, and they kept on calling me back, and things are moving along fairly well. And I finally get offered a conditional offer of employment, and you got to go finally do your background check and polygraph and stuff like that, and they offered me a job. And I had put it off. I said, hey, listen, I got a life here. I got a family. I got to figure things out. But yeah, I'll start in 6 months. And so, 3 or 4 months goes by, and my wife and I hadn't really talked much about it. And then all of a sudden, she finally says, okay, are we going to talk about this? Are we going to pick up our family and move to, from DC here, from Fort Worth? We had a great setup too. My mom was daycare for a little bit, and we only had one back then. My wife was working at a bank down in downtown Fort Worth. Life was really good for us. So, you don't make a lot of money as a police officer, and I couldn't wait to go to work every day.
It sounds fulfilling.
It really was. I had one call that almost, it came so close to, I was convinced I was, that I was probably going to take the job with the agency. But I had a call that almost changed it all. And it's funny how you reach those T's in the road in your life, and for some reason I still decided to take the job with the agency. But I had just literally just come off a very high stress call where I pulled my weapon. I almost shot this person. Unfortunately, I didn't. Came really close. I don't want to go through the details of that call, but so I'm kind of coming down from a pretty big high. My adrenaline rush. We ended up arresting her for aggravated assault. And I'm walking back to my car, on patrol unit. Took most of this took place in a grocery store parking lot. And then this nice lady stops me and says, "Officer, do you have a few seconds? Can I ask you talk to you for a second?" So that's just right. I didn't know who she was. And she goes, "Oh, you were at my apartment about 2 weeks ago." And I said, "I was." And all these type of calls, they start blending together. I go, "Give me a little bit more." She goes, "Oh, I live over in these apartments, and it was a Sunday afternoon, blah, blah, blah." I go, "Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you got the daughter, that's the 12-year-old daughter, and blah, blah, she was the daughter. Oh, yeah, I remember you guys, yeah. Oh, yeah, how are things going with your husband?" She says, I don't know what you told him when you were talking, and it was a domestic violence call. We were called out there, and apartment was up on the second floor. She was down at the bottom of the stairs when I first get there, and I just know that domestic violence calls, very volatile calls, very dangerous calls that police officers have to answer to every day. My backup officers are there, and then a third officer shows up. It's kind of surprised me because come to find out, both my backup officer and the third officer showed up, had arrested the husband like 3 or 4 weeks earlier for domestic violence, and he had resisted arrest pretty bad. So I talked to her, and then I go up and talk to him. And we worked through it. I didn't end up arresting him that day, though I probably had enough to do so. There was some gray area in there. And it was some disagreement with some of the officers that were assisting me, but it was my call. I had the sheet, as they called it, and I decided not to. But I did have a significant heart-to-heart with this guy. And, you have those conversations all the time with people. And I didn't really think much about it. So this lady stops me in the parking lot and says, "I don't know what you talked to my husband, but he's been a perfect sense. He's been a saint since then. And I really think he's changed, and I really think we're turning things around. I want to thank you for that." And I said, "You're just a great person and a fantastic police officer, and thank you for everything you did." And I was really blown away by that. It really, I'm like, whoa, wow, you go to all these calls and and you're in these people's lives for a very short period of time, and obviously sometimes you have to arrest people, sometimes you don't, but I mean, sometimes things can get violent, especially domestic violent calls. A lot of emotion, a lot of volatility. And it takes a lot out of the police officers to go on these calls, because you get thrown in the middle of this very emotional, complicated situation, and you got to figure it out really quickly. And I really saw the impact that you could have with people. And boy, that one, I've never forgotten that. I almost stayed a police officer because of it. But at the end of the day, I told my wife, I don't know, I wanted the agency to offer me a job. They did. And I said to my wife, Susan, she's a saint. She's so supportive of everything I've done in the last almost 40 years of our marriage. She goes, I'll support you if you decide to take the position up in Washington. And I decided to do so because I said to myself, this is probably a little egotistical, but I said, I don't know if I could live with myself, and I turned down a job for the CIA. I mean, it was really something as simple as that. Never knew anybody that worked there. Never obviously had been inside the headquarters building. Didn't know a soul. Didn't know a soul. Kind of similar to how I joined the Marine Corps. Didn't know I'm in the Marine Corps. Just said, you know what? We'll figure this out. So I picked up a family right then, and we had our second child a couple years later up here in Northern Virginia. But and off we were for the next 25 years of working at the agency. And then my wife, turns out she started working there about 10 months later. Nice. So we were kind of a tandem dual.
That's great when it's like, agency couples, because
it did make some things in our career a little bit easier. There's no doubt about it, about that. Sometimes getting assignments that complement both our careers was a bit of a challenge. It had its moments, but I wouldn't change the way, I wouldn't change anything. And about how that happened, it was the last place in the world hey, come work at CIA and be a paramilitary officer. I'm like, okay, what's a paramilitary officer?
So that was originally what you set out to do, was be a paramilitary
Yeah,
officer?
actually, back in those days, I don't think they didn't call us that. They had a different term for it. Special Operations Program Officer or something like that. It's like SOPO, I think it was called. And then I actually came in under what they called the dual track program. So I was going to come in as a paramilitary officer, but then you spend some time in SOG, Special Operations Group, and then you go down to the farm and get operational certified like all your other traditional operations officers or / case officers. Then you spend your career kind of bouncing back and forth between those two fields. So being the traditional operations officer work and what we do in the paramilitary world. That's it, basically what I kind of ended up doing. No great plan or any of that stuff. Got to the farm, which was a huge challenge. It's a challenge, unique and different.
Get into the farm and all of this. First of all, going back to the original Don Parnell, what a cool dad you must have had to, be
that was my
giving you that amount of responsibility. And, I'm just like, as I'm listening to you, I'm just in complete awe of like the types of sort of isolated experiences that you've had, but that really molded you into the perfect person to be a leader in the role that you were.
Yeah, my father was quite the disciplinarian when I was growing up.
In what way?
Oh, I always had my list of chores. All right. That came first. I was very disciplined, no sleeping in, get outside. I got some work to do. You're going to help me. She always thought I was a little bit older than I really was. Like when I was 10, he would give me stuff that, he would give a 15-year-old. When I was 15, he'd give me stuff that he'd give a 25. I mean, it was like, I remember he used to travel a lot. I mean, he would be gone for weeks and weeks at a time. And he'd always leave me this to-do list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take out the trash every day, do this, wash the cars every week. I washed all our cars every week and cleaned them out, whether dirty or not. Every week. I did this, okay? And then he listed one, he had paint the house. And he leaves town.
But no paint. You have to go find.
So I had to go figure it all out myself.
You made you resourceful.
And then when I turned 16, I had a car and the water pump went out in it. And so he goes, how are we going to get it fixed? I go, well, we can take it down. He goes, no, we're not taking it to any shop. Fix it yourself. So I went down to the library, got the Chilton's auto repair handbooks for the car that I had, and he helped me. And even after we fixed it, he and I both said that we probably bit off more than we can chew because it was really complicated with this particular model of car, but we fixed it ourselves. And so he was very much a disciplinarian when it came to me. My buddies, some of my friends didn't like coming over to my house because he'd put them to work.
Mm.
Oh yeah, and then some of my buddies didn't mind that, so they'd come over and help me out. And hey, I'm out here, I'm gonna go do this or whatever. So
yeah,
he's like slave labor or whatever. That's just what my dad did. He'd come in 6:00 on Saturday morning, rip the covers off, grab me by my big toe, so he'd get me out of bed. He goes, meet me outside in 15 minutes. And boy, if I wasn't outside in 15 minutes, he'd have my ass. Yeah. So he was tough love in some respects. There's no doubt about it. My dad was big expectations of me. He gave me a lot of responsibility, sometimes too much responsibility too. I still remember we were living in New York and we were taking the storm windows off. And in those old houses, you had the storm windows, which are the windows, the extra set of windows you put outside your normal windows during the wintertime. We were taking them off. We were either taking them off or putting them on. I can't remember which one it was. I had the ladder up. We had 3 windows, and I'm sitting there. I'm like in the 4th or 5th grade. And, my dad's, he was 6 foot tall.
I was going to say, is he tall?
About 6 foot tall, about 215, 20 pounds back then.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a small guy. He's at the end of his ladder up on the 2nd floor, and he reaches over and, he goes, hold the ladder. And I'm, all 100 pounds of me, and I'm sitting there holding the ladder. And of course, because he was too lazy to come down and move the ladder and go back up. Next thing I know, he hooks one of the windows onto the hook, and he doesn't get the other on the hook, and he comes rolling down.
Oh, I was worried that's where
rolling down. He grabs the gutter on the way down, and he just plops on the ground, right? And he's sitting there holding onto the gutter like this. Oh, and he goes, "Go get your mother." And of course, my mom my mom's pretty feisty. She's like, what did you expect? How can he possibly hold the ladder? And to my dad's credit, he didn't blame me for not being able to hold the ladder. I wouldn't have been able to, even, as an adult, been able to hold a 200-pound man at the end of the ladder.
Yeah.
Or 15-foot ladder. I'm not like, And that was the same weekend that he and I had put in an air conditioning unit. So I guess it was taking the storm windows off. That's what it was. And we put it in the little bracket on the window, and one of the brackets wasn't put together right, and the air conditioner just went like,
oh no,
all the way down and crashed. Oh. And the funny thing about it was all the same weekend. And then the funny thing is, we carried the air conditioner back upstairs, and it worked. But for the next 4 or 5 years, it just
they don't build them like they used to.
Yeah, they don't build. They had this big dent in where the air comes out, But the damn thing worked.
You're like it's rattling, but it works.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So he was, but he was at every game. My parents both were every game. Heck, my dad came to practices. I mean, he expected a lot of me, and I didn't think that helped. There's no doubt about that. There's a big part of. He's a big part of the reason why I motivated me to join the Marines. He was big on challenging yourself and finding your limitations.
Because I'm just thinking, to send you as a minor to, a war-torn region on LL and nationalist groups.
Yeah, my mom wasn't too pleased about the whole thing.
It is extremely bold.
Yeah, he even told me years later. He goes, "Yeah, I wondered sometimes if I was having you bite off more than you can chew on that one." But it was international air travel, which I had done before. Of course, when I was in the 6th grade or whatever. This is now in sophomore in high school. Because you'll figure it out. And this is back, before the internet, cell phones, and all that stuff. So you didn't have the connectivity or communications capability you have now. So a lot of it was just, he would throw me out there and see how I do. Yeah.
But, I, at the same time, I kind of like, I think of like that must be a bit nerve-wracking. I'm not a bit. It is nerve-wracking for a parent to do that. But I can also see that like, he had this like long-term wisdom of like, okay, well, this is going to teach him like to be independent and resourceful, and all of these things would come to really serve you.
Absolutely.
And he turned you into like the man that you are.
No, I told him that many times that my father and my mother turned me they shaped me into the man I became, and there's no doubt about that. And also a big part of it was sometimes you get this with the else. I was the big brother to my sisters. They were 7 years younger than me. So I was, even when they were tiny, I remember pushing the twin stroller, the baby stroller. Of course, we had a side-by-side one.
A double.
A double-sided by aluminum. And trying to get it into our 1965 Chevy Impala. And we'd fold it up, and I'm like in the 4th grade. And my dad says, "You're the man of the house. You take care of this when I'm gone." And I'm trying to get this thing in the back of the trunk of the car. And the damn thing weighed as much as I did. And I'm pushing it, and I can remember one time my parents were out shopping. We lived in White Plains, New York, and it was kind of hilly. And we come around this corner, and I got both my sisters in this cart, and and we start going up this hill, and I make the turn, and I ain't going up the hill. I start going the other way, and
oh no!
And I yell out, and of course they come and keep my sisters from going down the hill in the baby stroller, and I always carry the diaper bag. And be the gopher, go get this for your sister, whatever. Having twins, of course, was pretty overwhelming for my mom. And so I've, even to this day, I've been in the big brother role, the role of kind of the protector role. And so that's it. And it's also kind of my personality, but it's kind of what I grew into as a child. Being a big brother to my sisters, and then living up to their expectations of me, and setting the proper example, and so that it played a huge role. Being the oldest kid, the oldest kid, you gotta be a little more responsible. If you hold your sister's hand, whatever you do, don't let go of her hand. Or sometimes I'd have both of them like this, and I'm like. And my sister would be holding on to me or whatever. I remember we lost one of my sisters during Christmas time in Macy's department store. And then we can't find one of them. And then, because I had the one I had, my sister, I had her by the hand. My dad had the other one.
Oh, no.
And he lost her.
Oh.
So my mom's freaking out. My dad's freaking out. They're closing the whole store down. She said, my mother says, you stand right there. Do not let go of your sister's hand. They're out running around for me. And my sister's standing like this. I'm in the 5th grade and she's just tiny, whatever. Oh. And we finally found my other sister. We laugh about it at times. But that's definitely a part of who I became and who I am. Still that way.
Well, can I ask you, I know, you just buried your father's ashes.
Yeah.
And what came to mind? What did you remember most about him?
My dad wanted he gave me specific instructions 5 or 6 years before he passed last Thanksgiving week of 2023. He wanted his ashes spread in Red River, New Mexico. He used to go there a lot as a kid. I went there when I was a little tiny kid, and he always found Red River kind of a special place, and he had a special little area he wanted us to spread his ashes. And I just did this a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. We flew his ashes with us out there, and my wife and I made the trip down we were in Denver when we made the trip down to Red River. And there's a, and it was just my wife and I just said a few things, and I spread his ashes where he wanted to be. That's where he wanted to be. That was his wishes. He didn't want a gravestone. He didn't want this. He just said, say a few nice things about me. Make sure you mention I had a hole-in-one, because he did have a hole-in-one in golf.
Nice.
Is one thing. So, and what you remember is you just flash back to all those ball games and all the, my dad taught me how to throw a baseball. He taught me how to throw a football. He taught me everything that you teach a young boy. I idolized my father. He's my hero. I wanted to be just like him. Even though at times he was very disciplined with me, and I didn't understand that. Of course, as a young child, because I thought he was just being tough on me. But I understood it later on as an adult. He taught me everything that you needed to become a man in life. And, you think back to all those different times and all those different moments, and a lot of us experience with our parents. And, when, you kind of come to, my parents were only 21 years older than me. So my mom and I, she sometimes would joke that we're more like brother and sister than mother and son, because we're only 21 years apart. She had me when she was, as she would say, when she was a kid, and of course we kind of grew up together, and we still are very close. My mother's an amazing woman. My father, he had he's a little rough around the edges, and so he had some rough points. There's no doubt about that. But man, he always set the great example. I can still remember my dad's big thing was, you're going to be a clean plate ranger when you go over and eat at somebody else's house. That's what he called a clean plate ranger. I'm like, what? You will serve everything, you will eat everything that's served to you. And children are to be seen and not heard. That was my dad's rules. So we went over to our neighbor's house one night for dinner. I'm like in 3rd or 4th grade. And my dad despised one thing in particular. He despised canned peas. And they're serving peas. And we're sitting down at the dinner table. And it's one of the few times where I'm a child, but I'm sitting at the dinner table with the family. And they break those peas out. So I get my spoonful of peas, and I have to take one of everything that's being served. That just was the rules. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking over my dad, and he has to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he knows it.
Yeah.
He knows
you're watching.
I've carried every one of those peas on his plate. So I have to watch him. My satisfaction was I watched him eat. I know he hates canned peas, right? It's like,
right.
He hated those things. And he's sitting over there and he looks at me and he's eating his freaking peas. And I'm sitting there eating the peas with him because, I couldn't leave the table when I was growing up until I'd finished all my food, and then sometimes some of the stuff, he didn't like, but, it'd get cold and everything. And he'd still make me finish it. And so that was, he did set the example. He ate the peas. I ate the peas. We both hated the peas, the canned peas. I mean, and to me that was okay. I can take these peas as long as I'm watching my father eat them, and I know he ate them more than I did. We talked about that for years.
That's great.
And I remember he also one time he told me he gave me the trimmers, and he wanted me to trim these little bushes behind the house. I'd never trimmed bushes before. I'm like in the 3rd, 4th grade. I had to use a ladder. And he leaves. He goes and does something else. He comes back like an hour later. I mean, they're like twigs. The bushes, I mean, they're you could just see right through the neighbor's yard. And he's like, what did you do? I go, well, I trimmed the bushes. And my mom comes out and says, don't you say a thing to him. You told him to trim the bushes. You didn't tell him how much you wanted to trim them. And he trimmed the bushes.
Yep.
And he goes, you know what? You're right. Next time I'll give you a little more guidance.
Nice. Wow. So what, as a parent, you're a father to 2 girls. And what are some things that you carried on, some principles that you learned from your mother and your dad that you emulated as a father?
My daughters, Allie and Gianna, a lot of my eyes, and of course my grandkids. But no, first of all, it's great being a girl dad. All right, I just fantastic having daughters. I mean, it's just the most special thing in the world. Having daughters, no matter what age they are now. My daughters are adults now; they're grown, but it was just the most special days of my life. You finish what you start. That was a big thing with my parents. You finish what you start. There's no backing out of this or backing out of that. Finish what you start. Your word is everything. Don't shy away from hard work. Everything's just not going to be picture perfect. Some things you're not going to like as much as others. But usually, and get a good education. My dad was big on getting an education. You will graduate from college. You will go to school. Both my parents were. You will go to school. And I reinforced that with my children. But you take what you learn from your parents, and of course, my wife, and what the core values she learned from her family. You kind of blend them all together. And I was big. So a lot of those. One of them was, I told my daughters, I said, listen, if you want to go, I will pay for your school. If you want to go all the way to law school or med school, I'll pay for it. As long as you stay in school and get the passing grades, I'll pay for it. And they took me up on that, and they both got their master's degrees eventually after college. But that was kind of my, I don't know, say, but that was, this is what I'm going to do for my children. If somebody else wants to do something different, that's fine. That's what I was going to do for them. Education to me was very important. I didn't really appreciate it back then like I do now, but because I wasn't a very good student. I was just an average student. But and I told them that was important. And then in hard work, things aren't going to come easy. Sometimes things do have to suck a little bit for it to get better. It just happens to be that way. And in some respects, if you want something bad enough, you're going to have to work hard for it. And it's not going to be all, it's not going to be all roses. It's going to be challenges, because in teaching them that life is going to, when you're in your adolescent, in your late teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, you're going to have these different challenges in your life that, how you, if you're, my daughters are 27 and 31 now. 10 years from now, their family's going to be different. They're going to have a completely different set of challenges that happens in our lives. And some basic core values. I was one of my biggest leadership traits that I thought I kind of picked up when I was in the Marines. But I always try to carry on. I even carry on when I was a senior manager at the agency. Was it's not a trait that a lot of people think was compassion. Compassion for people. Compassion for people's circumstances. Within reason, but as a commander, having some compassion for your troops, trying to understand it from their perspective.
Yeah.
And I think my daughters I've learned the understanding of hard work, getting a good education, stick-to-itiveness, if I can use that, make up that word, sticking to something. And things don't come easy, nor should they.
Yeah.
And just, just trying to have some good core values.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting as well to learn about with your mom, the compassion piece. When you said that, I immediately thought of your mom probably really passed that trait on to you, and the beauty of life as well.
She, when they were byproducts of what happened in the Korean War, because they were living in Korea at the time. And so they're actually, she was born in 1940, so she was 10 or 11 years old, 12 years old, when the Chinese North Korean forces actually came down and actually went into their compound in their house, and she and her mother got split up and ended up in 2 different refugee camps. She's 11 years old.
Terrifying, yeah.
And she saved, during the battle that was taking place, this U.S. soldier grabs her. She never knew who this individual was, and pulls her off to the side and shields her from what was going on, the battle that was taking place. And she talks quite passionately about that, as understandably so. But she had no ideas, everything that was going on. She's able to eventually get out of her refugee camp with some other kids.
Full-scale Chinese intervention is about to bring the second phase of the Korean conflict to an end. 8th Army's end-of-the-war offensive was launched the day after Thanksgiving in 1950. It started out smoothly, but by nightfall of the second day, the UN was facing a new enemy in Korea, and a new war had begun. The Chinese rolled swiftly southward, splitting the Allied line and cutting off Marine and 7th Division troops in the east near the Chosin Reservoir. In the space of 10 days, more than 100,000 fighting men were evacuated. North Koreans, by the tens of thousands, flocked to the dock area to plead for evacuation. From this one area, more than 90,000 North Koreans deserted their homes rather than return to the life they had experienced under communism. For hundreds of thousands of civilians trying desperately to outrun the advancing communists, the journey southward was a nightmare of cold, weariness, and confusion. Children who had no part in the causes of war received full measure of its hardships just the same.
I mean, what resilience that she gained at such a young age. And all of this, as you pointed to, all of those aspects of, the parents come together and feed into that next generation. They fed into you really impressive, remarkable traits that you would then be able to...
You just passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, I guess now, it would be nice to get into the part in your life where you moved to Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking again, how you said there wasn't anyone within your family that was in the military or in the agency.
No.
Was there some, were you into James Bond? What? Nothing?
My dad he took me to all the James Bond movies.
Okay.
My
dad
took me to movies you don't take a 10-year-old kid to. He took me to all Dirty Harry movies. So you don't take a 10-year-old kid to Dirty Harry movies. He took me to all that. You're old enough to understand it. Don't worry about it. I thought it was cool. I love James Bond. Absolutely. No, the fascination of working at the agency was a mystery. I always told people to this day about working at the agency. If I can use this way to describe it, is you walk into a room that's completely dark, and on day one they have the lights, and they can turn the lights on just a little bit.
Yeah.
A dim switch, right? And every day that you're there, the room gets a little brighter and brighter and brighter.
Nice.
But even after almost 24, 25 years, when it's ready for you to not work at the agency anymore, you're going to walk out of that room, you still can't see into all the corners. So every day it gets a little bit more a clear understanding of what it is the organization's about, what it really does. And it's it's got its bureaucracies. It's just another a government agency, but it's a unique place. It's you kind of similar when you join the military. You kind of have to buy into that lifestyle, multiple deployments, separation from your families and your loved ones. There was a lot of that in the organization. When I joined in 96, and I had about 5 years before 9/11, and I had a certain career path I thought I was going to take, but then 9/11 happened, and I kind of threw all that.
Yeah, can we get into that?
Sure.
So once you join, you were going down the dual career track was the expectation. You go through the farm. We'll come back to the farm because I think, you'll be able to share some great stories that will provide people with some good insight. But the organization at the time, what was the paramilitary organization like? And how did it transform post 9/11?
When I joined in the mid-90s, it was very small. It had expanded and contracted significantly since the Vietnam era. And so...
And these were Clinton days, right?
Yeah, Clinton days for Clinton.
Was there a lot of support, like politically? Did you feel...
No, there wasn't a lot of... It was a pretty small entity back then. We were a lot of we were in the Balkans a lot back then, Latin America, but it was a trend. Look back now, it was definitely a transitionary time, but we still did more of I used to call it as a paramilitary officer, is kind of a ruggedized case officer. You work more in these austere and dangerous environments. Probably with your military training, have a little bit better training to better handle it and take care of yourself. And then 9/11 happens and our stock goes through the roof. There's not enough of us. Because now we're going to find ourselves in these places like Afghanistan, and of course then eventually Iraq, other places around the world that are dangerous places, austere locations, isolated places, very difficult to operate in, very dangerous to operate in. So our stock kind of goes through the roof. I mean, I had I'd done some of my time in Special Operations Group, took some Spanish language training, and I had actually moved my family to Latin America for a what we call a foreign intelligence tour, a traditional tour, kind of a way, in Latin America. So we had just moved down there we'd only been there about 3 weeks when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
Yeah. We got there on August 20th.
I thought you were there for like a few months. I didn't realize it was
3 weeks. Got there on August 20th of 2000.
You haven't even unpacked your bags at that point.
No, we're still living in a hotel, a hotel apartment. And so I get recalled back to Washington. I had just left Special Operations Group about 6 months earlier when I went into language training. And then went down there. And so the next thing I know, I get recalled back. I leave my wife and my 2 daughters, who were tiny back then. They were preschool and first grade, in a hotel room. I said, I'm not too sure when I'm coming home. And off we went. Went back to the headquarters, Washington, and then eventually deployed into Pakistan, and then we inserted from Pakistan into Afghanistan.
And you were one of the first into Afghanistan?
Not the first. We had the teams that were working with the Northern Alliance, if you remember back then, and we had a couple different teams, and we were just timing how when I showed back up to Langley, and we were working, things were crazy, and they're organizing things together. I get said, okay, you're going to be on the team. It's going to come in what they call from the South, coming from Pakistan. And you're going to be with your tribal, and all the different teams were different warlords. And Northern Alliance was pushing pretty hard at that time down, and had gotten on the outskirts of Kabul. And the guy we were going to work with was a guy named Hamid Karzai. Now, at the time, I didn't know who Hamid Karzai was or what he's about. I didn't realize that he was going to go on to be president of Afghanistan for the next 12 years. So we get into Pakistan for a very short period of time. Me, Karzai, hook up with our team leader. And we inserted into Afghanistan just less than 48 hours later after getting to the country. With there's 20 of us. There was 11 ODA, various members of the Special Operations community and of the Army, and then 5 or 6 of our guys.
Behind me is the Jawbreaker 91101 Mi-17 helicopter. This helicopter was used just 15 days after the attacks on 9/11, and 7 men and $3 million from CIA made its way from Uzbekistan into Afghanistan in the middle of the night so that they could partner with the Northern Alliance and pave the way for the coming invasion. This helicopter was the perfect aircraft for the situation. It was able to blend into that landscape because of the Russian helicopter. Those were the type of helicopters people saw every day in that region. And it was also specially situated to go over high mountainous passes. At one point, they were so high up that the people on board said they didn't have to worry about crashing because they were only 3 feet over the mountain. This helicopter paved the way for 100 CIA officers, 300 Special Operations Forces, the 15,000 Northern Alliance members, and the might of the U.S. Air Force to drive out Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces out of northern Afghanistan in just 3 months. Initially, they predicted it would take 3 years. This helicopter symbolizes the can-do spirit of our CIA officers, and we are very proud to have this here at CIA headquarters.
And Karzai made 21. So we had 4 helicopters, 4 Black Hawks. We inserted from the Buda, Pakistan in the south and made our way up north around Kandahar and went into Uruzgan province. I think it was just outside of Tarankot. And in early November of 2001.
Okay, take me back, if you can, to those, like, the earliest days, right immediately after 9/11. You fly back to Langley, and what was the emotion? What was the sense at the time?
We go back up to Langley, and you know, things are just crazy. I mean, things are nuts. They're, you know, a lot has been written about this. There's been movies put out about it, documentaries. The organization is completely kind of reorganizing itself to go. We're going to go after Al-Qaeda. We're going to go after back into Afghanistan. And how are we going to do that? And how are we going to do that with our military colleagues? And as a matter of fact, there was just some documentary that just came out on Netflix about this. The hunt for Osama bin Laden. Yeah, that chronicalized it very well. But the agency, and I was just a nugget back then, but the agency director and his folks had come up with a plan of how we were going to team up with these different warlords, especially the ones up in the northern part of the country, and push south. For they were going to push south, and then we needed to find somebody to partner with in the south, and who was going to be our guy. Initially, there was a guy named Abdul Haq that we thought the U.S. coalition was going to back, and then Abdul Haq went into Afghanistan against the advice of a lot of other individuals, and he ends up getting tracked down and killed by the Taliban. So Karzai, at the time, looks like maybe this, because Karzai is from Kandahar. He's from the Papazai tribe. He's Pashto. And this was all focused on, you know, the Pashtus. So maybe Karzai is our guy. So we went in with Karzai, and he was organizing his tribals, literally, as we were prepping to fly in. And we flew in and we landed, and they met us. It wasn't quite that smooth, but it was quite an adventure, as you can begin to see.
This was it. After a last meeting in Camp David with the National Security Council, President Bush greenlights the CIA plan.
We're going in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan, where even some of the Russian forces never even made it into. I mean, you were leaping back like 100 years, okay? Yeah. Into Afghanistan, and 700 or 800 miles from the closest, what we call friendly forces, just right in the heart. And they drop us off, and then we we're doing airdrops and things like that to resupply Karzai's guys and us as we made our push south towards Kandahar. And it was a challenge. It was a challenge to say the least. It was the purest form of unconventional warfare. Mm-hmm. And a year and a half later, I did the Iraq invasion, in the early spring, March of 2003. And that was very conventional in the biggest sense. Yeah. Big tanks, big Bradleys, the whole thing. Very conventional war, where Afghanistan was in its purest form, is so unconventional. I mean, there was, at the height of when we first went to Afghanistan, there weren't that many U.S. boots on the ground. I mean, I don't know, 150 maybe, 125. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't that many. Now, we had tremendous amount of things on our side, one of them being air power, which has been chronicalized in some of these movies and stuff like that. You've seen that part in some of those movies is very true. Bringing that to the table is huge. And some of our ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft that give us the tactical intelligence that we needed. Mm. Was so unbelievably critical. And then the interoperability between my organization and the special operations community was absolutely critical.
And was that like a traditional relationship that you guys had already had, or was this a post 9/11 world where it became a very symbiotic relationship between SOCOM and
we had the relationship goes back decades. We had pretty good relationship with them, but this really brought us together really quickly, really fast, just out of pure necessity. Yeah, it was there, just out of pure necessity, and there was a lot of growing pains. Heck, there still are growing pains with that. Those two different worlds when they come together. My colleagues in the special operations community, regardless of the service, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, they're just amazing individuals. Just absolutely the ultimate professional soldiers. Some of the Army Special Forces ODAs I've worked with are fantastic. Some of the MARSOC units I've worked with. Mm-hmm. The guys out of some of the JSOC units, just absolutely quiet professionals. I got nothing but the greatest respect for them. I learned a lot from them. I just, we could, it was one team, one fight. And it was, you get together, you had these small teams that were sometimes just thrown together, just by sometimes happenstance or just, and you look around the room. I can remember I was, I've been a chief in a lot of different locations in Afghanistan, and, you look around the room like, it was like 10 of us here. That's it. Like, that's it. Oh. Those other 9 guys or gals. Mm-hmm. That's all you really have at the end of the day. You have a lot of Afghans working with you and you're working with, but, you come together fast. Yeah. And you make it work and you figure out how to make it work fast. Mm-hmm. And everybody brings, everything they have to the table, and everybody has something to bring to the table, and hopefully it complements each other. You get to talk through some things, sometimes a little bit different language as far as how we speak in the intelligence world, as far as how they speak in the military, bringing those two together. Us folks that came as paramilitaries kind of bring with us that kind of history and knowledge that helps kind of bridge those gaps, because a lot of us were in that world. Now we're working on this side with the agency. That's where we get most of our people from. And it matured and grew significantly. It was interesting to see. I was recently talking to a couple of my old buds of mine, and we saw this maturation grow over 20 years in the relationship that we had with the special operations community and our military brethren. Were, it's 20 years later, and a guy I was running around in Afghanistan with, who was maybe an 03 or 04 officer. Now he's a 3-star admiral. Mm. And we both kind of ascended up our different
chains. And it also makes you realize how much time has passed.
Yeah, how much time has passed. 20 years, something like that. And so I can think of 4 or 5 stories off the top of my head that it evolved just like that. Yeah. And having that understanding of and how that relationship matures. And it's trust, it's personalities. It didn't always go well. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of You heard a lot of
Well, there's big
stories.
egos too.
A lot of it, a lot of testosterone, a lot of egos. It's all going to be out there. A lot of misunderstanding, talking over each other. That happens. I mean, I've seen the ugly with that. Really seen some of the ugly, but I've also seen some really amazing stuff that we were able to do to get what everybody was able to bring to the table. There's nothing quite like that, though, being in those smaller, more austere locations, and you have what you have.
Yeah.
And, and that's it. Everybody, I need everybody's A game. We don't have any alternative.
Yeah. You're small, you're nimble, you have to be resourceful, and it's a unified mission, obviously, but you figure out a way to make it work.
That was one of the nice things about the organization, is that it's relatively small, especially compared to the military. So we're a bit more nimble and quicker and making things happen. That was recently documented in that Netflix documentary about how slow the military was in responding to going into Afghanistan. And the frustrations that some of my military colleagues had at that time is just it moved like an iceberg. Well, we were a lot quicker because we're a lot smaller, and we had pushed a lot of our command decisions further down the chain of command. And how quickly it could happen.
And the resources, I mean, if you needed something, you would get it.
Within reason. I mean, we couldn't do what we do without the military being there. Okay,
Yeah.
we needed their support flights. We needed their eyes. So it was definitely a team fight. You can't take just one thing out of the equation. You have to have it all.
Yeah.
You have to really have it all. It's just not the people that's also in the field. It's the people that are supporting at some of the forward logistics banks and all the way back to Washington or whatever unit, where the unit happens to be from. Wherever it takes all of it. It's kind of cliche to say this, but it's really, I mean, it takes everybody. The person that's sitting in some cubicle back at Langley sometimes just as important supporting your mission as some guy that's flying a helicopter in to resupply. It just is. It takes the total team effort to make it work, to accomplish our mission, and most importantly, to accomplish our mission and get everybody home safe.
Right.
And that, unfortunately, didn't always happen because it's combat, it's war. It didn't happen, and then didn't happen. I can sit here and spend the next half hour reeling off the names of the guys that didn't make it home. And you carry that with you every day. And I have the ones that I've been most exposed to or worked with or know of. That doesn't, whatever you want to say, my list is not any different, better or worse than your list or anybody else's list. It just happens to be the ones that I'm most familiar with. I can't recount the thousands of lives that we've lost over in these different conflict zones, but I know the ones that I was closest to, whether that I was here in the States when they passed, or when I was with them, or I was with them in country, but not maybe physically with them in that same location, or they were part of our units. Some of them I never even met. Some I had very well, some that were really good friends of mine, and their families. So, as you get older and a bit more sentimental, you feel this enormous obligation and responsibility to don't forget their sacrifices. I know it's cliche to say that, but it's really true. Don't forget their sacrifices. And what's that famous quote? As long as we say their name, they never are forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly how the quote goes, but it's something like that. It seems like it happens mostly on their anniversary dates of their deaths, when you're reminded by it. I've been on all sides of it. I've been there with them, and when they died, I've been there in country, and I've been on the other side where I've had to tell the families, which is, I don't know if the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's tell somebody that their husband or father is not going to come home. And so, very not easy. So you carry that with you, but I look at it as, my enormous sense of responsibility, an obligation I have to, remember them in the best ways you can, whether it's, you post something on social media, you talk to people about it. Some hit you differently than others because you're connected to it differently, or whatever it might be. Obviously, you're in combat when one of your buddies dies right there next to you. I mean, that's pretty connected.
Yeah.
Even if somebody might have only known for a few days, doesn't matter. Or, and two of my colleagues, Ron Hoke and Nate Delmar, were killed in October 2016. I had to go tell Nate's family. I found it as, it was just difficult. So the sacrifices that what we call the Gold Star families, if you don't know what Gold Star families, those are the families that have lost a loved one in war. They make that sacrifice every day. They're making it today because that individual is not home as their father, husband, brother, or son. They've been gone for how many years it happens to be. They still continue to make that sacrifice. I go on and I live my life and but they're still making that sacrifice. And then their kids make that sacrifice because they grew up without a dad or a mom.
Yeah.
And that resonates with me. And you just feel this huge sense of remembering, those that paid the ultimate sacrifice with their life. And, that's a lot. And it's not, and so it still has a huge emotional impact on me, and it should.
It should.
I want it to. It's something that it's never easy for me to talk about, but I feel like I'm almost obligated, have a responsibility to do so. And what these families that are still out there are making those sacrifices every day for us. So I had about 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in a hotel eating breakfast, and this lady walks up to me because I had a Marine Corps t-shirt on. And I was eating breakfast. She just comes up to me and starts talking to me. I said, I was in the Marines, and so was my son. I said, what did your son do? He goes, my son was in the Marines. He was killed in Afghanistan about 15 years ago. And it just, don't even know this woman. And I was just like, and she was not extremely emotional, but she goes, I just want to share with you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for this. I have a special place in my heart for Marines. Not sure. And I just, immediately got up and I talked to her and told her how much I respected and cared for all sort of families and what she was having to deal with every day. It's a mother.
Yeah.
Who lost her son in war. Of course, that's happened to, unfortunately, thousands of people, but still doesn't make any better for her.
Yeah.
I remember being called by a Gold Star dad after our pull out of Afghanistan in 21. Which I won't go down that path. It just irritates me too much. Many times me, he said, was my son's death in vain? Did he die in vain? Now that we're out of Afghanistan, did he have to die at all? That's a pretty heavy question. And I told him, I said, listen, Nate was doing what he wanted to do, what he chose to do. He was doing what he thought was best for his family, what is best for his country. And don't let anything at all diminish the value of that. I said, your son did not die in vain. He died for his country. He died doing what he thought was the best thing for his country. And don't let our pull out of Afghanistan take any value away from that. I said, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All those men and women that we lost over there, every one of them, they all thought they were going to come home. They weren't planning on going over there to die, be killed in combat, or blown up by an IED or whatever. But they all realized that that could happen. And just because the political landscape changes 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, whatever happened to be, that doesn't take away from their sacrifice and their service. So, I don't know. He seemed to be satisfied with that. It's just a question that nobody has an answer to.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing this perspective, and it's so important that you talked about the Gold Star families, because while everyone should know that they really did pay the ultimate sacrifice for us and this country and what they believe in. Let's take a break.
Just inside the main entrance of CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, is a white marble wall with a collection of stars etched into the stone. It is the most sacred space on our compound. Each star memorializes a life lost in the line of duty, a sacrifice to our nation. The inscription above the stars read, "In honor of those members of the Central Intelligence Agency who gave their lives in the service of their country." The Book of Honor, on display in front of the memorial wall, contains the names of CIA officers who died in service. Each is written next to a gold leaf star. To protect intelligence sources and methods, some of the names must remain classified, even in death. Once a year, though, every name, even those unlisted, is read out loud in recognition at CIA's annual memorial ceremony.
Don, thank you so much for sharing, those perspectives. And they have a very emotionally heavy toll, in remembrance. But part of what makes you such a great leader as well is like the acknowledgement of those moments and those challenges. So I'd like, if possible, I'd like to talk about some of the kinetic things that happened and what led up to some losses.
I guess we talk about first one in Afghanistan. You want to talk about that? Or?
Lay the ground down. Put us in the experience of you get into, you're coming in from the south, you're linked up with Karzai. Tell me about just take us into your world at that time, you and your guys.
We inserted in Afghanistan. It was a pretty rough insert. We got in and we hooked up with our tribals and we started making our push south towards Kandahar. We ended up a few days after an extremely challenging insert, but we got in, everybody was safe. We made our way to Tarankot. The Taliban didn't know we were there. They started rolling up. They started coming up our way from Kandahar the next day, and the ODA with their air controllers went to the south of town and just could see the dust trails. There's a clear blue day. They just wiped them out, and then they all ran away. And we made a push, and we got north of Kandahar in a small little village called Chwadi Kol. And we set up in this little building. It was actually used to be a med clinic. It was the first building that we had been in. All the other places that we had lived in up until that point in time was mud huts.
Mm.
And, it was one of those things as we're pushing our way south every other evening, the Air Force is dropping its bundles of weapons and ammo and equipment for all of Karzai's tribals that were arming and equipment to push forward to fight against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda as we're going into Kandahar. And we started running up, because at this time there's still only 20 of us, so we started running up against some resistance. And we set up in this little town, this little village, and there's this little building that we're in, and then there's a little knob of a hill right next to it. The ODA had sent up in there, and then that morning, it was December 5th, that morning, the evening of December 4th and December 5th, we had got some more folks that came in from the military, kind of beefed up our size and our strength, which played an important role later in that day. So it's December 5th. It's a clear blue sky day. We could look up all the time and see every day. We would see the B-52 flying over our head. At this particular point in the conflict, Karzai had already been voted in absentia by the Bonn Conference to be the interim president of Afghanistan, but he was still with us. And the cost was to push into Kandahar, negotiate the surrender with the Taliban, and then get him up to Kabul to be inaugurated. So he can become the interim president. And obviously, we didn't know he was going to be the president for the next 12 years at that point. But he was our guy. Mm-hmm. So a lot was being put in behind the whole push on Karzai. So that morning, it was supposed to be, we'd had a couple rough days leading up to that, a couple of minor engagements and stuff like that. And we got some new guys in that morning on the mill side, and they were doing these air recce missions and dropping bombs in caves. It's pretty standard stuff. I mean, they do this all the time. So I'm sitting there in our little ops room on a footlocker, and about 9 o'clock that morning, unfortunately, there is a miscommunication between the air controller and B-52, and they end up dropping a 2,000-pound JDAM on top of our own position. So it lands right outside the area of this little building I'm in. It had a plexiglass window, because we made a comment that it was actually kind of a pseudo-real building and actually had some sort of glass in the windows. So it's the first one, it was like, oh, this is nice, Mm-hmm. It's a really tiny little building. And that was the side where the blast came through. Now, I was just about to walk out the building and walk up to the little hill that's next to the building where the ODA was at, and swap out. I had borrowed the night vision goggles of Master Sergeant Davis, J.D. Davis, the night before, and I was going to give them back to him. And our team chief, Greg, grabbed me while I was about ready to do that. And he goes, I'm going to walk out there anyhow. I'll give him to JD. And then I need you to start, writing some of this stuff up, what's been going on the last 4 days in some of our correspondence, our cables back. I said, okay. So I sat down, and Greg goes up there, and I could see him out the little window, and then I start typing on my laptop, and I'm sitting on a footlocker, which is important. I'll tell you here in a second. And then I see Greg gets called by Karzai, who's in the building, little tiny building right next to us. Come down and see him. So Greg comes back right across, runs right in front of me. And this bomb comes in on top of us. And we, at the time, I didn't know it was a 2,000-pound JDAM. I just thought we had gotten some probes the day before. I thought, first of all, there's no time to react. It's just like I just heard the sucking sound. And then, my world got rocked like it's never been rocked before or since. So I was on this footlocker facing this way, and imagine the plexiglass window here goes up to probably about the height of this couch. And I had 2 incidences of divine intervention. And this was my first one in Afghanistan. I had another one in Iraq a few years later. And I'm not an overly overtly religious individual, but I felt like I was pushed to the ground into the blast on my shoulders, like somebody turned me on my shoulders and pushed me. And because I was on Foot Locker, there was no arm there, so I just fell right on the ground, rolled into a little ball, and the room wasn't much. It was probably maybe about twice the size of this room. All the shrapnel and everything just comes through, and I can still remember in slow motion all this stuff. I'm looking up.
Frame by frame.
Yeah, frame by frame. So some people say they have a similar, or sometimes they've been in a really nasty car accident and they'll remember it in slow motion. It's very true. Just how your brain works. How your brain works or doesn't work, I don't know. It just does. So I rolled up in a little ball, checked my buddy Will, who was kind of over next to me. He got blown back in the corner. One guy got blown back out in the window, back out the door. We check each other out really quick, and then we all thought that, okay, we're getting probed, we got hit. I thought maybe an RPG had hit one of the vehicles that was next to the building I was in and hit the gas tank, caused a second big explosion. But in the back of my head, I'm going, man, that is one big RPG and that's one big gas tank. But, I had never been at ground zero of 2,000-pound bombs, so I don't know what it was really going to feel like. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say that, but it was true. So I come... So now we're like, we got to go fight. So I grab my kit, grab my rifle, and boom, we're got to head out the door. The ODA medic, his name was Bubba. It's one of the first guys I run into, and he's got blood shooting out of his left arm here, right there at the bicep, connects to your elbow, like water out of a hose. He turned the water hose on, how the water comes out. And I clamp my arm down on him, and he clamps his arm down on it, and he passes out, and I wakes back up, and I sit him down and get a tourniquet on his arm, and he wakes back up. And he goes, I gotta get to my men, my men are down. I'm like, hey, Bubba, and he passes back out, comes to real quick, and I'm like, hey, we got a tourniquet on your arm, we stopped the bleeding. He looks at it, he goes, okay, I'm good. Go take care of somebody who needs it. So pop out of the little building where I'm in. Unfortunately, there was a glass at the end of that window, and the glass at the end of that hallway where the door was, and all that had been shattered, and things are crazy. And there's a couple of dead or seriously wounded Afghans right there. Really seriously wounded. I stepped over this. I'll tell you a story. That part in a second. Stepping over this guy like 15 or 20 times. And so I run out, and it's just crazy. And there was a lot of people out that morning, a lot of Afghans that were incorporated into our location. And there are just, there's a lot of wounded people, some dead people that are dead soldiers and Afghans. They're right there. And where do you start? So we have this significant mass casualty incident going down. We got a lot of. We got some problems. It's all a little blurry the next 4 or 5 hours, but I think somewhere early in this process, a couple of things happened that I can remember. I don't know exactly the sequence that some of it happened, but one of them, I see this young soldier laying on his back. And I don't know who he is. He had just come in a few hours earlier, and those extra soldiers that we got in that morning.
Yeah.
And he's on his back, and he's unconscious. And he's covered in dirt and dust. I could see his DCUs on, his uniform and everything. And so, but all his intestines are out. They're just, and I always relate to, most people have seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, and in the first 30 minutes of the movie when they're hitting the beach in Normandy, first of all, any of these comparisons, I'm in no way comparing myself to what those men did in Normandy. And I'm not making that comparison at all. I'm just to give you a proper visual example of that. What those great Americans did is just unbelievable. I'm not making that comparison. I just want to give you a good visual or a bad visual. There's a scene in that show, in that movie, where there's a soldier on the beach, and he's crying for his mother, and all his intestines are out. So imagine that, but without the water. That's hard to do. Instead, there's no water, but there's just all this sand and dust, and so he's sitting there, and you have like 36 feet, I don't know, 35 foot of intestines, and you're right. You have a lot. So it's all hanging out there, and so I get over, and he appears that he's breathing, and he has a pulse. I check him, and I'm just sitting, kneeling beside him, and just seconds after that, we had put some mortar rounds and RPG rounds up on that little hill because part of our defensive position. They started cooking off, a couple explosions, and it was a little confusing. I'm like, are we taking more? Because I still don't know what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I still don't know
what happened. I mean, what happened was, I did know that when some of the extra guys that we got in that day, that unit was able to form perimeter around us, so we knew that some of us didn't have to. They were going to fight, and we were going to take care of our wounded. I did know that much. So I naturally threw myself across his body, kind of perpendicular to the way it was laying. It was just a natural instinct. So I'm now laying across his body, and this guy wakes up. He just throws me off him, gets up, and runs back into the little building he's come out of. It's about a 25-foot walk back into that little building, and he collapses right at the little stairs. There's a couple of stairs leading up to this little building I came out of. And he passes out right there.
Oh my God!
But all his intestines are still attached, from what I could tell, and so there's a 20-foot of his intestinal that I have to pick up. So I pick up. So I kind of equate it to you have a big load of laundry, and you're kind of picking up a sock here and picking, you're trying to hold everything like this in your hands, and so I'm picking up his stuff, and I kind of get over to him, and he's laying there again on his back. I kind of decide to roll him over, and he's on his side, I think, and I roll him over, and I just kind of plop him down on top of him. He's unconscious, appears to be, this guy lived, by the way. I don't know his name. I do know he lived. And I rinse off what I could, a big bottle of water, and wrap it up with a gauze bandage, just kind of collecting up his, I mean, literally like pulling on him like they're a rope. And wrap it up and dress the wound as best I could. I just had some basic medical training. I'm no PA, I'm no combat medic. I remember, so I take care of him. I finally had stepped over this Afghan too many times, and he was still alive. I finally reached down, pulled out my knife, ripped open his shalwar kameez, and he was like mush from like the top of from his thighs up to like up to his rib cage, which is mush, burnt flesh. And he was alive somehow. I don't think he lived much longer. I'm like, what do you do for that? We treated our U.S. casualties as quickly, and our Afghan casualties as quickly as we can. I remember one of the guys off the ODA, sometime in all this, he runs down the hill, and it must have been early on. Brad was his name, and he's screaming at me, "Get it out of my back, get it out of my back." I go, what? He goes, I got something stuck in my back. And so he had a piece of hot shrapnel that was right up against the kind of the lower part of his back and the flesh closer to the spine. So he's in a lot of discomfort and pain. So I laugh at it now, and he and I have laughed at it since, but I bend him over my knee and I whip up and I pull out my Leatherman, right? And I could see the wound into his back, and I could see and I separate his skin, and I could see the top of the piece of shrapnel. So I take my Leatherman, and I'm just about to do something very stupid, which I didn't do. Just about ready to grab that piece of shrapnel, I stopped. And he's screaming, get it out, get it out, get it out. And I said, dude, I see the shrapnel, but I'm not going to pull it out. He goes, you got to pull it out. It's killing me. And I'm like, dude, it's right up against your spine. And I don't know how big it is. And I don't know what kind of damage I'm going to do with a Leatherman. If I pull it out. And he gets it really quickly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, for some reason, and I checked the rest of them out in the buddy care process. You know, you check them from head to toe and say, hey, listen, man, things are going to be, you don't have a lot of bleeders. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
That psychological treatment, it's just in the whole mindset of things. Once you like, okay, I am going to be fine. Okay, this hurts, but I'll just deal with it. Let's leave the piece of shrapnel there and get a surgeon to take it out. So we have this ridiculous conversation during all that. So I didn't take it out,
You're the patient. Come on in, patient. We're going to have you sit right here. Okay? So what's your name? Ricardo. Ricardo? Well, my name's Sergeant Baggs. Most people call me Mel or Petey. Let us know if you need anything in flight. Wave your hand. You're a good one.
We're not so much a hospital, I would say, as a flying ambulance.
In that litter strap.
We have about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds worth of equipment that we carry. And the weight loss plan for women over 30. Hump your bags every other day. Extreme heat and no food.
All the way down. Watch the rollers. All the way down. All the way down. All the way down.
Just stabilize the patient, keep them comfortable, and hopefully keep them out of the woods till we can get them where they need to be for more definitive care.
Thank you very much. I'm your patient care tech, okay? I'm going to be taking care of you. I'm your good flight medic.
He's not in a whole lot of pain. He's still taking some pain medication, so he's a little bit in la la land.
How's that? All right.
Are you almost ready for us to turn
We're
lights
ready.
off?
Hang on just a minute. Are you ready? We'll be ready in just a minute. I'll get everything back in here, get everybody in their seats, and everything tied down before we take off. Okay. Doing my job, and I love it.
The people you fly with makes a huge difference. That really gets us through it. You leave your family and you come out here and you meet people that you never even know, but it doesn't matter. 5 minutes feels like you've known them all your life. And the friendships that come out of things like this are forever enduring.
57 enter, check wheels downwind, runway 3 west side, 90 feet to runway. Here we go.
We brought the patients in. The recovery crews will come out and pick up the patient. They'll take over patient care from here. We'll offload them.
Next.
We'll offload Ricardo.
Hi, big guy. Write me and let me know how you're doing now.
He's got some long time healing and a lot of therapy he's going to need for that hand. So many people have died defending what we all believe in. And these guys and girls are out there still doing it.
I think one of the most, during this whole process, I was turned around during all of it and somebody handed me an arm, a human arm. It wasn't very big. It's probably the arm of turned out to be an arm about 12, 13-year-old child, boy. And this old man is sitting there and he typical, stereotypical, if you think old Afghan, all kind of bent over. And I turn around in the middle of this and he just thrusts this arm at me, and I naturally grab it. It just throws it right at my fist, and I grab it, and I look down on it, and I see it's a complete right arm. And I look at it, but the problem is it's still attached to the kid by the skin down here.
Oh.
And the kid is standing there, and he's just kind of swinging back and forth. His shoulder blade is all sticking out, and he's in shock. And his pupils were like this big, they're dilated. I could tell he's in shock. And his eyes were like almost mesmerizing. He kind of put me in like, I look at his eye and I can't keep my eyes off of him. He has me completely locked up, and he's just looking at me, and I can remember almost being in this, like, and I kind of had to shake, wake up, quick, what the hell's going on? And I lay him down. I finally kind of shake my head and, I lay him down, and I'm trying to dress his wound, where do you put the arm? It's barely hanging on by the skin. He's bleeding pretty bad. It's debatable. We never knew. I don't know if the kid lived or not. One of my buddies says he did live, so maybe that was the case. Just to, putting the bandage on, the blood, my gloves. We had different gloves, but everything was so bloody by that time. Everything I had was covered in blood. I was covered in blood, U.S. blood, Afghan blood. It didn't matter at that point in time. Taking care of wounds. Soldiers said, I had no medical qualifications to take care of some of these blasphemies, but you had to do what you had to do. We had some combat medics, VAs with us, physician assistants with us, and they saved a lot of lives that day. We got some guidance from them. Sometimes they were too tied up and doing whatever they had to do, so you had to deal with it. Mm-hmm. The ABCs of life saving all come into play. I felt at times so inadequate because I just didn't have the medical training. And I've always professed this: you can never, ever, 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 ever have enough. I think you heard me say this before: enough medical training in your preparation for combat. Never have enough. I felt very inadequate. I wish I knew more on how to, and I did learn more after this. I'm dealing with some of these wounds. I can still remember, like one of the ODA guys had his right arm was completely mangled, hardly there. He has a lot of second chest wounds, and he was in a lot of his second chest wounds, and he was bleeding faster than we wanted him to bleed. And he didn't. It was really difficult to deal with him because of the second chest wounds, and he was in a gurney and full of his own blood. We're trying to slow down his bleeding somehow. It took us 6 hours to get the medevac in for a lot of complicated reasons. I won't get into that, but the fog of battle and the fog of war. Mm-hmm. So, in the military, the combat medical piece of it, you have something called the golden hour, something they found in Vietnam. So you can get that soldier back to a medical professional, an aid station within that first hour, the likelihood of them surviving goes way up. If they have a wound that's possibly survivable. So Mark's on this gurney, and he says to the guy, I put some pressure on his chest, and when I did, it seemed like it relieved his pain a lot, and the bleeding slowed down. So me and my other buddy, Ray, I put this rock. I found this rock, and I put it on Mike's chest. And the second I put it on his chest, I had to find a couple different rocks, right? I found this white rock, I put it on his chest, and he was like, oh. You could tell he was in a lot less pain. And the bleeding
compression helped, yeah.
Compression, just enough. It just had to be just the right amount. It wasn't like you could sit there and hold down his chest. We had hours to do this. And so I wrapped big bandits around this rock. So fast forward, it's about, a month later, we're in Kandahar, and I'm talking to some of the the doctors, like the MD doctors, like the surgeons, the Army surgeons that worked on the guys that finally came in, and we're going through the injuries, and I'm trying to learn from, how to better dress a blast injury from an arm, and how to do this better and how to do that better. I was trying to, with the thing with the boy and the arm, he was bleeding really bad, and I was trying to find a way to clamp his arteries and veins, and I was having difficulties doing so. And he basically said, Don, the way the veins contract back into the core of the body, that would be really hard to do, even if you were in a,
because it's like just a nub at that point.
Yeah, it was really challenging. But he goes, we were going through the message. He goes, who put the rock on the guy's chest? Because the rock was still on his chest, I guess, by the time he got to the message, go out to the helicopter ride. I said, that was me, Doc. He goes, oh, man, that's a brilliant idea. You saved his life. I said, what? He goes, yeah, he went through like 30-something pints of blood on the operating table. We almost lost him a number of times, and bought his time on the back end. That was just a fantastic idea. And I'm like, I don't want to take any credit for that. My buddy Ray, who was with me, was one that came up with the idea. I just found the rock. And Master Sergeant Jefferson Donald Davis, Sergeant First Class Daniel Pettitori, and Staff Sergeant Brian Cody Prosser were killed that day from the U.S. military.
9/11, where everybody in America, probably in the world, is glued to their television. We're watching these horrible scenes. In a secret bunker in Florida, they're scrambling, first of all, to confirm who's responsible, and two, what are we going to do about it? And you would think that there had been something built up and something ready. There was nothing. The men of ODA 574 were really a cross-section of America. They were highly trained individuals, had gone through years and years of training to become Green Berets. ODA 574 was led by a captain named Jason Amarine. He was from Hawaii. He was a West Point graduate. The initial plan was for this one team to go into the South and build a militia and then take a town, the capital of Uruzgan province, called Tarancote. And from that, it would be a demoralizing blow. Tarancote was considered the heart of the Taliban. For the men of ODA 574, when they were first tasked with the mission and heard the name Hamid Karzai, they immediately just thought, warlord. They didn't know who he was, they didn't know what his support was, and they sent a 30-year-old captain to Pakistan to meet with this man and decide, was this budding rebellion worth risking the lives of Americans? The minute they touched down, everything went to hell. The team had planned to spend months, maybe 6 months minimum, to build this rebellion, this militia. But then literally one day after they were on the ground, a small town rose up against their Taliban mayor and hung him in the streets. So it was a very sketchy situation. And there was a lot of weight on the shoulders of this one captain. And immediately they had a choice. Do we abort the mission? Everything we've planned for the last 10 days has gone out the window. Or do we take the fight to the enemy? It was estimated that there were 1,000 Taliban coming, 50 to 100 vehicles coming to put down this village and slaughter them. ODA 574 stands beside Karzai with his militia, 11 men with a handful of guerrillas against 1,000 hardened Taliban fighters. And they win, and they drove them back to Kandahar. And literally the next day, Karzai had credibility. Not all the men on ODA 574 came home. And the big question is, was it worth it? Was it worth dying for?
A lot of guys were wounded. I can't name them all. A lot of guys learned. A lot of Afghans were killed and wounded, seriously wounded. JD was, the bomb physically landed at JD's feet. That's where I was supposed to be standing next to, because I was going to take his night vision goggles back to him that morning, when I started the story. And plus, the ODA made a good cup of coffee in the morning, so I was going to have my canteen cup. I was going to have a cup of coffee. But I got it intercepted, and so I didn't do that. So I'm not standing next to JD. Dam was blown in half. And Cody Prosser was, he was we went through triage, and he was by the docks. He was labeled expectant. His brain was so swollen up in his head, and he died on the helicopter. And a bunch of guys got seriously wounded. Lifestyle type stuff, really seriously wounded. Obviously, the guy on the gurney with the rock, but there were other guys that were seriously wounded from that blast. For me, I felt like when I was sitting on the footlocker, I was pushed to the ground. I actually kind of fell into the blast, which didn't make any sense. I rolled up in a ball. I rolled up in a perfect little ball, I can still see all the shrapnel coming over. There's things sticking in the wall that shouldn't be sticking in the wall because of the velocity that was coming in at us. I remember I called in on the radio soon afterwards, and I was breaking out the new antenna, thinking my antenna was all shredded, and somehow the blast didn't affect my antenna, which is right there in front of the blast. It didn't make any sense. What saved me a little bit was that the bomb doesn't come down strictly 90 degrees. It comes down like more of a 80 degree or 75 degree angle, I guess. And I was on the back side of that angle as it comes down like this. I wasn't here. I was back here. But you're still going to absorb. You see the pictures on TV of the bombs going in the buildings, and the building just that. Be there at that spot, 10, 15, 20, 40, 30 yards away. That's what it's like. But being in that building helped. I couldn't hear for a while on the radio, but we got the call out. And the radio worked just fine. God, who knows why. The antenna worked just fine. We got the call out. And there were a lot of other, there's a lot of other guys that were seriously, we dealt with. Dan was blown in half. Bottom half of his body was here, the top half of his body was over there. It was unfortunate. These obviously was a friendly fire incident. I don't like the term. There's no such thing as friendly fire. It's all bad. Okay. And so, that was a tough day, December 5th, 2001. So every December 5th, 2001, I remember those guys. Obviously, something I'm very connected with. And, as you know, there's been some stuff in documentaries about that unit and how those guys paid the ultimate sacrifice. There's an accident. There's a big investigation that happened after that. There's an accident for a variety of reasons I won't get into. We happened to drop the bomb on top of our location. It was a new controller that day, and he had made a mistake.
Don, what did that do to the morale at that point? You guys are still at the beginning of the mission. Yeah,
Karzai was with us. Karzai was superficially wounded during all of that. There was a big concern, but was Karzai killed by, obviously, the folks back in Washington. We confirmed that he was still very much alive. Karzai was he was out kind of rallying the troops. It really, man, horrible day, long day, but it really just, our resolve was even stronger. Those guys weren't going to die in vain. We were going to accomplish this mission. We were going to get the Khan. Actually, it was like the next day, the Taliban came into our village and we negotiated peace with them. That's a whole other story. Karzai's like, you guys need to stay inside. There's a lot of Taliban outside. Okay. Yeah, it worked out. And we went into Kandahar a few days after that and set up, and it was pretty crazy. But it really, our resolve was even stronger. We'd been on this long path and this long road with Karzai to, doing what we had to do. And we knew that Kandahar and the Pashtuns were key to all this. And, we didn't know this was going to turn into a 20-year, plus year engagement in Afghanistan. We didn't know. At that time, the war was just right in front of me. The battle was right in front of me. We didn't have a lot of guys to do it. And it was the most austere, most challenging operating environment I've ever been in. Working with a culture of people that, are just completely different than anything we understand in the Western world. I had some other a lot of other things that happened during all my days in Afghanistan. That was probably, it was probably one of the more, in Afghanistan, it was the most personal. I use that word sometimes and people don't understand it, but it just was. I had another incident in Iraq about a year and a half later that was a bit more personal than that, because that was from enemy fire. And I just don't know, that's the only time I can come up to explain it. It just was. I was just, when you're right there having to live through this and figure out, save people's lives, or your actions or inactions might mean the difference for whether somebody lives or dies. That's a lot. And, it's a pretty big responsibility. That's why I always say you're never going to get enough medical training. I didn't have enough at the time. Because you might, your buddy's life's going to depend on it, or you're going to depend on him. So don't forget those guys in the sacrifice. They're the first, Mike Spann, lots been written about Mike. I knew Mike. Mike was killed a few weeks earlier. Up in northern Afghanistan prison. Mike's death was pretty, he was listed as missing action for a number of weeks, but a week or so later, I think they determined that he had been.
And he was in Ground Branch.
Hey, buddy. It was just after the horrors of the 9/11 attacks. An elite group of CIA operatives called Team Alpha was dropped into Afghanistan. CIA officer and linguist David Tyson and CIA paramilitary Mike Spann had been sent to this fortress to interrogate roughly 400 foreign fighters taken captive by U.S. allies. Tyson is now talking about that secret mission on camera for the first time.
Was the thinking that someone might have information about
certainly.
the next 9/11?
Yes. And they all said, we gave bayat to bin Laden.
Bayat loyalty.
And we are Al-Qaeda.
Hey, look at me. You know the people that you're here working with are terrorists? They killed other Muslims.
That defiantly silent prisoner turned out to be a young Californian, John Walker Lynn, later labeled the American Taliban. The prisoners should have been disarmed, but some managed to conceal their weapons, waiting to strike.
One of the guards runs towards me, and in Farsi says, Farar kun, flee. And then I hear Mike's voice. I go to Mike, and Mike's shot, and there's men on top of him, and they're trying to take Mike's rifle. And I shoot 4 of them, and I take Mike's rifle.
Shoot 4 of them?
Yes. And with Mike's rifle, I turn around and begin shooting the guys who are now charging me.
This is not a linguist anymore.
No. No.
Mike Spann dies fighting, the first combat casualty in the war. Tyson escapes to another part of the fort.
When, we got word that Mike was missing and was killed in that prison uprising, that was pretty impactful. Mike was the first U.S. casualty of the Afghan campaign, and then the guys that died with me on December 5th were the first military casualties.
And the irony was that it was quote unquote friendly fire.
Yeah, the first combat casualties actually happened a little bit later on. Like I said, I don't like the term friendly fire.
Yeah.
Obviously it's, it hurts a little bit. It hurts a lot more because obviously it was preventable.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of asking about the morale angle, is like, how do you psychologically regroup from that?
It builds your resolve even more because you want to make sure now that, okay, this bad thing happened. Heck, we almost killed Karzai. But God, we're not going to fail now. We're not going to let these guys die in vain.
That's incredible. That, this is why I love talking about this and understanding that mindset that
you're just super stronger than before. If it could have been even stronger, and in those experiences, there's no doubt they bring people together. The entire ODA was pretty much wiped out. I mean, we went in with 20 guys, and I think 6 initially in Afghanistan. I think 5 or 6 of us came out without being killed or wounded. Seriously wounded, I should say. I mean, we all have scars, physical and emotional, that we still carry with us. I mean, and mine aren't any different than anybody else's, any better or any worse. They're just mine. I don't want to take away or devalue anybody else's experiences, and you know, that those are just my experiences. I got nothing but the greatest respect for, you know, guys that have, and gals that have lived through the hell of war and having to deal with it. Those are just my experiences, and there's more out there. And you learn, and you do learn, and you know, and you from it. I mean, fast forward, we're in Iraq, probably about 2 years later. Really bad place. Really just got set up. And we get ambushed, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Before we close out Afghanistan, you were with Karzai.
Mm-hmm.
He was at ground zero of the blast kind of thing. But what leadership did you see coming out of that day?
So Karzai was out amongst his folks and his very quickly, helping, encouraging them on, and people saw that. One, they saw that he was alive, and he had a bandage on his head, and so it definitely helped. He knew to do that. You know, this is back in the infancy of Karzai, as I call it. He received a lot of criticism over the years for what he was doing, but I saw him, I remember earlier on, I saw him deliver his acceptance speech to the Bonn conference when he was appointed as the interim president of Afghanistan.
Mm.
He's on a little Inmarsat phone, and he's giving the speech in English.
Mm-hmm. He was fluent in English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And over the phone, no notes. And he thought he had rehearsed it like 5 times.
Mm.
Literally, I as I'm almost finishing up with my my book, my memoirs, he's the second bravest man I've ever met in my life. And I'll tell you a story about the first bravest man later.
You got to tell us about the first.
Second bravest man I've ever met in my life. He had a big price on his head when he went in. He didn't have to do what he had to do. He really laid it out there. Really did. He was genuine. He was authentic. You know, people say he became corrupt. This happened. I mean, be the president of Afghanistan for 12 years. I mean, that's going to change you no matter who you are. He really, truly believed in what he was doing, and he cared. I truly believe that he really cared for his people. But that system, that whole thing is just it's gonna corrupt anybody, or not corrupt, but it's gonna make it extremely difficult. So I thought, we used to call him Mr. K. And I joked with him one time that it said, when he became voted to be the interim president of Afghanistan, I said, Mr. K, you're going to make it to the White House before me. He goes, you never been to the White House? I said, no, I've never been to the White House. Yeah, he went to the White House before I ever did. So, we just joke about that, stuff like that. No, I really have a lot of tremendous respect for Karzai, especially the Karzai back then.
Huh.
Man, he was.
The original Mr. K.
Yeah.
Don, and then, so the agency was initially providing protection for him, and then that later was handed over to State Department. Did you guys have an overlap, or was that just...
It was a little bit. We were initially, in those initial stages when we went into Kandahar, Karzai was with us, so we provided him that protection, and then we had some additional folks come in to assist us with that. But initially, early on, oh yeah, most definitely. Things were crazy, man. The Kandahar was like the Wild Wild West, man. It was the Wild Wild West. There were men riding around on bicycles with the beards were shaved, so these white faces, kites were flying, and music was playing. Things that the Taliban didn't allow to happen, especially the kites and the music. And smiles, waving, everybody's happy. See these Afghans with these white faces because they shaved off these beards. The Jenga trucks are coming in from Pakistan with you could buy anything you wanted in the world. You cannot stop the power of self-propriety or capitalism.
Commerce at its finest.
Yeah, man, they just came in. They're selling, DVDs. They're selling this. You could buy anything you wanted. I mean, they just came in by the hundreds of trucks. It was crazy times because, they had been pressed by the Taliban so much. And now all this stuff is there. And
that must have been very liberating, like fulfilling for you to see that liberating.
Absolutely, it was.
Aspects of society. But also, like at the same time, you're kind of like, not you, but one would be like, but it's such a slow society to change. Our American view of wanting to bring upon countries this new era of democracy and all of this, and the interpretation that we have it, like, the commerce is there. Everyone wants to, make a buck kind of thing, but
it's a country that hadn't.
How sustainable?
Yeah, first of all, I remember reflect back when we were going to the different villages on our push initially down towards Kandahar. We pull into a village and we just sit there and reflect, and we'd say, okay, how many signs do you see that the 20th century even existed in the village we were sitting in? And there were a few things, but sometimes there was a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
That's 20th century. There's a weapon, like an AK.
Okay.
There's usually a well.
Sorry, time out, but what kind of sad truth and reality is it that, 20th century, there's an AK, so, there's technology.
That's that we're in the 20th century. There's a well that maybe NGO dug. There were plastics.
I was thinking garbage.
Buckets and shoes.
I was thinking like plastic bottles on the side of the road.
No. The pails and buckets and shoes there had a lot of Afghans had. There's plastics. And the last one, there are 5 things there. The last thing was easiest to see but hardest to guess was polyester in the clothing. Those were the only things that you could tell you sometimes that you were in the 20th century or the 20th century had even existed, because some of these places we went to, the Russians never made it there. So we show up and they're like 9/11, Twin Towers. What are you talking about? Some of these Afghan villages had never seen anything more than a 2-story mud hut.
Right.
Now it would be no different than if a Martian would like beam himself down right here in front of us, and we would be just like, what the heck? We're sitting here, we got all our kit and all our gear, and they're looking at us like,
you're gonna with your night vision goggles.
Yeah, we got all like, stuff and everything like that, and they're like, what are you doing here? Who the heck are you? They were very curious. They would ask to touch our skin, touch our face, and just are you like me? Are you really? It was, of course, I didn't speak Pashto, but most communication is nonverbal anyhow, and we would, and when you could see their curiosity was unbelievable. Oh my gosh, the curiosity is unbelievable, understandably so. And what the heck are you doing here? I mean, it was very clear in our heads, but not to them. What are you doing here? So you see that, and then you realize it was a country that still does have it, but almost zero infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, the loop road around Afghanistan is a little ratty 2-lane road. That's it. I mean, there's no infrastructure. And some of these folks are still living like it's, back in the 17th or 18th century. I mean, it's just what it is. They're not any, a lot of them most of Afghanistan at that time probably had an illiteracy rate somewhere around 80%. Could be. Some people say I say it's around 80%. Some people say it's lower than that. But outside of Kabul, it was really low. That doesn't mean these people are stupid. They just learn a different way. All right? They just didn't have the opportunity. Or I remember a lot of our Afghan indigenous forces, some of them didn't even know how to sign their name. So they just put their ex. They'd seen it in a movie or something, so they go like this, you know. They're not dumb, not at all.
Just different.
They're just different, and you have to have a cultural understanding of that and appreciation of it. And it doesn't come easy. God knows I made enough mistakes on that stuff. And
do you think the agency prepares people better off than other organizations for that level of cultural differences?
Yeah, in the traditional sense, yes. You know, they do. But, you know, we were exposed to it very quickly and under a very short period of time. I mean, in the summer of 2001, if you go back to that time frame, nobody's thinking about going to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We all, let's go. We're playing Colombia, you know, ball. That's where we're all going, you know, war on drugs. Let's go, you know, the FARC. Let's go do this. Let's go do this. But we had Bosnia's been kind of wrapping up. Nobody could tell you we were going to go to Afghanistan and fight this unconventional war. So, I mean, like, what the hell? I mean, I remember looking like, where the hell's Tarin Khan? Where the hell's Kandahar? I never looked at Afghanistan. Never had any reason to. Well, of course, we knew, you know, but what happened, what we did with, you know, we had a history there. That was well before my time. And with the Mooj fighting against the Russians and Charlie Wilson's War, the movie and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I knew some of that, but I never really focused on it.
Right. And actually, as I'm thinking about it, your, like, you know, Cold War perspective was one of the biggest playing grounds of Cold War was Africa, actually. And so your childhood probably had your scope focused on a different region of the world, you know.
I grew up in the Cold War era. I mean, when I joined the military, you know, early 80s, it was, Cold War didn't end till the end of the 80s, 1989, 1990. That was 1989. So, I mean, I was a byproduct of the end of the Cold War, per se. We were going to go fight the Soviets. That's what we were going to go do. That's what our military was preparing to do. That's what you focused on.
And a lot of that translated into the, you know, drug wars that were taking place in America.
Drug wars. We had Somalia. You know, we had Somalia. I mean, those Black Hawk Down, all that stuff. The movie about that and what happened in Somalia and those Rangers being killed there.
The Battle of Mogadishu, which left 18 Americans and hundreds of Somali soldiers dead. The mission was depicted, of course, in the popular movie Black Hawk Down. It was considered a disaster and had a notable effect on the U.S. military operations in the years since. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin reported on this for the CBS Evening News back in 1993.
CW3, Mike Durant.
An American helicopter pilot taken prisoner in Somalia. Dazed and bloodied, he is questioned by his captors.
Innocent people being killed is not good.
One of 6 U.S. soldiers listed as missing in the heaviest fighting yet in Mogadishu. 12 American soldiers killed, 78 wounded. Some of the dead dragged through the streets by jeering Somalis. A Canadian reporter saw one of the bodies.
You could see quite clearly that his face had been mutilated and that he had a large gash wound along one of his thighs. This crowd followed it down the street and around a corner, pausing every once in a while for people to kick at the corpse, to spit on it, and to stomp on it.
The worst U.S. casualties yet in Somalia, forcing the Pentagon to send reinforcements into what has become an all-out urban war.
The Delta operators that were killed there, and saving Mike Durant. We had that. The Gulf War was barely a hiccup. Iraq was always on the radar then because of Saddam. Then we roll into Iraq in February, March. Now it's 2003. I thought I was going to sit that one out. I get recalled back. I end up going to Iraq, hooking up with a lot of the same guys I went into Afghanistan with.
Okay, so with Iraq, and you were thinking probably at the time, like everyone else, like, what the hell does this have to do?
Yeah, I said it then. I say it now. And going back to, January, February of 2003, what the hell are we doing here? The argument back then was Saddam has WMD. And they had this single source reporting of some connection between Saddam Al Qaeda, and we all knew that didn't hold any weight at all. You could see right through it. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here again? And I just come out of Afghanistan a couple different times, and I'm like, we need to be, the focus of our main efforts need to be in Afghanistan and rooting out Al Qaeda. And our challenges were becoming more immense because most of them have fled into Pakistan. And now we had this whole kind of a repeat from Vietnam. I go back to Laos, Cambodia, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail and all that whole piece.
Mm-hmm.
Now the bad guys are in Pakistan, and we're having to deal with that aspect of things.
Talk to me about the Pakistanis too.
Oh, the Pakistanis. I mean, I've worked quite a bit with them, and they've always been in a tough position. I try to just stay fairly neutral in this. I worked with a lot of Pakistani military officers, very nice guys. Some of them really trying to do the right thing, but the problem is that there's some that were working, not completely with us in the regard as far as, because they were given their guidance to maybe delay our progress in certain things, or
because of financial incentives, probably.
Yeah, I mean, there was a cycle that took place there all during the 2000s up until the UBO raid in Abbottabad, which obviously proved everything true, that how many people within the Pakistani government really knew about how long bin Laden had been in Abbottabad, and been quite a few years up to that point. So there was some collusion there. That relationship, I developed over time. There was a time, and this is just me looking at the time, because I went to Pakistan a couple different times in that time frame, into the Fatah, really early on in the Fatah, working with our Pakistani colleagues, stuff like that. And just strategically, at the time, the Bush administration, which was fairly new, people forget that Bush had only been in office for like 7 months when 9/11 happened. He had developed a relationship with Musharraf, and there's a certain amount of trust that was put in that relationship. Mm-hmm. So that kind of trickled down to even just a nugget like I was at the time, where we had this special trust, but we could kind of see that, okay, how truthful are the Pacs really being about this or about that? And there was just this trust that we're going to work with the Pakistanis to root out, define Al Qaeda and their high value targets. Well, there are a lot of financial incentives, a lot of other incentives that were built into all of that, and so some of that worked against us. Reflecting back on it now, and reflecting on it then too, you could see this cycle of things that would take place with them. A lot's been written about that, and about our relationship with Pakistan, going all the way back to this, when we were working through Pakistan, we were fighting with the Mujahideen against the Russians. So, and then Pakistani's history with India and everything that's recently come back up to the forefront. Things are happening along the Pak-India border and how that impacted what we were doing at the time. It's a fascinating country. I got a lot of respect for a lot of the folks that I worked with there. But in such tough circumstances, the federally administered tribal areas, the Fatah was basically, it's just a slice of Afghanistan. We used to call it Pashtunistan. Not much different than some of the places we were in Afghanistan. So the challenges were multiple, in so many different ways. Al Qaeda and Taliban, they had a little bit more free reign on that side of the border, on the other side of the Durand line. I mean, some places the border's not even that well defined. Mm-hmm. The history in that region goes back hundreds of years, back to Genghis Khan, that whole thing.
Yeah.
The history's been written about that. So, and we repeated some of our mistakes of past history, unfortunately, and we got into Afghanistan, and we started a nation build, which is the last thing that we saw this at the time. This is the last thing we wanted to be doing. And then, how much were the Pakistanis collectively working with us, not only just the agency, but with the U.S. government, and how much were they working against us? And a lot of that came to fruition with the Abbottabad raid.
This is Pakistan's famous military academy. They've got a great big tank right outside of it, and it's famous because this is where all of Pakistan's army officers come to get trained, and it's literally about half a mile to a mile from where bin Laden was living. I'm going to go take a look how far away it was, how to get there. This is about as close as we're going to be able to get to bin Laden's compound. It's about 500 yards that way. There's a police checkpoint here, army checkpoint over there, police checkpoint there. The police are coming down here. We're not going to be able to go any further forward. How come he was able to live here and get away with it, and that intelligence services didn't pick up on him sooner? That's going to be a lingering question, and no indications we get an answer to it anytime soon. Nick Robertson, CNN, close to Osama bin Laden's compound, Abbottabad, Pakistan.
Like, wait a second, they're right down the street from this Pakistani military academy the whole time. What the heck is going on here? A lot of guys are like, I told you so, things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And you can't forget the fact that they're a nuclear power. They're a nation that, formidable.
One needs to reckon with, because
absolutely, and of course
they are a nuclear power.
And just recently here, just within the last few months, even though it's a lot of the headlines have been taken over by Russia and Ukraine, of course, Gaza, and of course the Iran-Israeli conflict. But we were just talking about Pakistan and India just a few months ago, and they were at loggerheads like they've always been that way. But is this going to go nuclear? Literally. It's just what are they going to do here? Pakistan used to be part of India. A lot of people don't know that. There's 1947, they divided away from India. So there's still familiar connections there. A lot of them speak the same language. There's a lot of different languages spoken in that part of the world. But it's a fascinating country. They knew at the time they were a non-NATO ally, so it put them in an area where they're going to help us root out AQ, and of course that turned out to be quite a long and protracted proposition, as we found out, with kind of culminating with the UBL raid on Abbottabad.
So now is like, at the time, it's always helpful, like when you can go back and like reflect on this time and things. But there was a couple things actually before I get into that. I wanted to ask you about, when you mentioned the divine intervention.
Yeah.
So from a physics standpoint, is what you're saying that it doesn't make sense, like scientifically, to have landed the way that you did?
The first one with the bombing, I felt I was pushed to the floor. I felt like there was somebody behind me. And as you're sitting behind me, it's like they took my right shoulder and I turned from left to right and I rolled onto the floor like this. I felt somebody push me to the floor. There's nobody there to push me.
Really?
Because that bomb came in so fast. That's it. You have no time to react. It's like literally, it's coming in at terminal velocity, okay? It's coming in fast. And I get into this position on the floor because I was sitting on this footlocker, which helped. And I should have just been completely blown backwards and back out to the door. And it didn't happen. And I'm like, how the hell did I get in that position? You can't react that fast. There was nobody there to push me. And I fell into it. Now that the little barrier, the little wall that was there, and then the glass was above it helped because but still, you still had that blast.
But how did you fall into the glass? Yeah,
I can remember going like this, going and seeing it all come on. So I was felt, and then the second time is when we were in Iraq, and one of our guys off the ODA, a guy named Joe Briscoe, got his arm severed by an RPG. And during that engagement, our vehicle had gotten shot out from underneath us, and Joe was in the back of it, missing his arm. And I had to carry Joe a really long distance, 150, 200 meters under fire.
What happened?
We were in Iraq. Fast forward a couple years later, late 2003. We just got set up there. Our small little operating element, working with the various military units and one of the special forces ODAs, and we did a reconnaissance of the area we were going to be working. The first time we've been out in that area, and things were very hostile. The insurgency was just starting to. This is the fall of 2003, starting to really take its roots. But a lot of the stuff we didn't know at the time. We're on our way back, come out of this little town, and we think, oh man, that was not. We didn't know you didn't even get out of the vehicles. We're trying to stay as low profile as we could, but that was a challenge. Vehicle pulls up in front of us, and there's some young males, military age males, we would call them, in the back of this vehicle, and some of them, they were acting kind of suspiciously. A couple of them jumped in the back of this, like this had like the Suburban or something like that, SUV. Like they were messing with something in the back, kind of got us nervous. And so we had two vehicles that I was with the ODA, and we were going to pull these vehicles over. We're going to try to stop them, see what they were up to. And then they immediately jumped out off the road, and they cut along this dirt road, and we kept on the main hardball road. And what we didn't realize is that we had to kind of drive around the road like this. And when they jumped on that dirt road, it kind of gave them a shortcut. So when we came around the corner another mile or so down the road, two of them were standing there with RPG, and they shot the RPG at us. To this day, I'm still not 100% sure if the guy shot the RPG. I know that sounds ridiculous to say that. So there's a decision made by the ODA commander and myself they were going to chase after those guys. We get separated. I end up with, anyhow, it's a little complicated. I end up with a couple of guys from the other ODA and my vehicle, and we're trying to get comms up. We put the two vehicles in place. We have the guys that were in the other vehicle chasing after these other bad guys. They end up getting in a firefight. We're having comms problems back to them. So a couple of the other guys left from the ODA, one of them was the communications sergeant, Joe Briscoe, was having problems with comms, and he's trying to get his antenna up. RPG comes in and takes off his right arm. And I got my back to him when we start taking fire, and I'm firing over. I'm at the right front tire, and I'm firing over the hood back towards the targets, back towards the bad guys. That RPG came in, and Joe's arms were just a certain way, completely chopped. There's big fins on an RPG, and when the RPG flight, it chopped his arm right off. Blew up behind us. And there's a couple other RPGs that had gone off. But this one chopped his arm completely off. I mean, right at the shoulder. Right, there's no nub at all. And he fell back I turned around, and he's at my feet. And he's looking up at me, and he's screaming. And one of the other guys that was with me, Chucky, screamed, "Joe's been hit, Joe's been hit, Joe's been hit." And I had come up to their vehicle from my vehicle to help coordinate the comm situation. Their vehicle was unarmored. The vehicle I was in had armor on it. It was up what we call a level 7 armored vehicle. It was bulletproof. You could take bullets. Theirs didn't. It's early on in Iraq. And so I get Joe in the vehicle. Things are pretty crazy. He's missing his arm. He's bleeding pretty bad. Get Chucky in the driver's seat. I picked him up, threw him back to the vehicle. Our vehicle was a bullet magnet. So we got out of there. We had to get out of that area, and we hooked back up with our other vehicle. I gave them the task of going back over this little hill and pick up the rest of our guys. And we weren't that far from our home location, our home base. So I just made a decision. The best thing we can do is to save Joe's life is we're going to split ourselves up, which might have been a tactical error at the time. Let's get Joe back to the base and save his life, because we're not that far away. We're like, 15 minutes away, 10 minutes away. So we did decide to do that. So Chucky's driving. I'm in the right front seat, facing the rear, trying to get this bandage on Joe's stub. And we just about get right back up to the main hardball road and vehicle dies. And can't get started, and we're right out in the open. We are right out in the open. And man, we start taking more rounds. And they're slapping that hard plastic in the dash, you know, and the metal. Whack. And the rounds are going through the vehicle. You have the dumbest thoughts at that time. I'm facing the rear in the front seat, facing the back seat of the Suburban that they're in. My butt's up in the air, up over the seat like this, trying to get this thing on Joe's arm. And we realize we're not going to get the vehicle started, and I think I'm going to get shot in the butt. And I said, I'm going to get shot in the butt. I think I'm going to get shot in the butt just like Forrest Gump, because Forrest Gump was shot in the butt. Why do you have those thoughts? I don't know why you had those thoughts.
The ceremony was kicked off with a candid speech by the president regarding the need for further escalation of the war in Vietnam. President Johnson awarded 4 medals of honor to men from each of the armed services.
America owes you a debt of gratitude, son. I understand you were wounded. Where were you hit?
In the buttocks, sir.
Oh, that must be a sight. I'd kind of like to see that.
The movie had just come out, a few years earlier. I'm not going to get shot in the ass like Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump, the ice cream cone, and the Lieutenant Dan, that whole thing, right? So we get out of the vehicle, Joe's still in the back seat. We're returning fire, and I quickly realized we need to get the heck away from this vehicle. This vehicle's dead. We're not going to get it started. We found out later that we pieced it all together that when some of those RPGs came in and took off Joe's arm, some shrapnel hit the gas tank and knocked a big hole. Because we went back to this area and you could see the big fuel spill. And all the gas came out. So we only had the gas and the fuel lines. That's why we just drove that short distance and ran out of fuel. So we're sitting there on this road, and I looked to my right and looked to my left, and I don't see much. And I see something way down my left, way down there. There's a couple of vehicles, and I tell Chuck. Chuck's a little tiny guy. Stocky little guy. I said, Chuck, go get that vehicle. Abscond that vehicle. I'll get Joe. Without even thinking twice, Chuck won the Silver Star for this. Deservedly so. Chuck takes off. And for a short period of time, they start shooting at him. The fire's kind of coming perpendicular to his movement. Now I got to go in the same direction. So I go around, unfortunately I go around on the side of the vehicle. It's kind of the semi-hot side of the vehicle where we're taking the fire one. That was the easiest way to get Joe out. And so when I get around to that side of the vehicle, the rounds are still, they see me and they stop shooting at Chuck as much, and they start focusing some of their fire back at me because now I'm a big fat target. And so I open the door, and Joe's kind of in and out of it. He's lost a lot of blood. As you'd expect, he's lost his arm. And I said, Joe, we're getting the fuck out of here. And Joe's probably about 6'1", 6'2", I don't know, 185, 190 pounds. Got some of his kit on. He's not a small man. He's missing his right arm. And he's in and out of consciousness. But in fact, he was in the back of the car when we couldn't get the vehicle started. And he wakes up and he goes, I think the car's out of gas. He actually says that. And I'm like, okay. It's a no shitter. So this is the divine intervention moment. I open up the door, grab Joe out of the back seat, and I can still remember the round hitting the front dashboard. Whack! And I pick Joe up, and I'm right-handed, so that's my strong side. And I throw him up over my right shoulder. Now I got to run this direction, so my right side is towards the fire. And I remember saying to myself, I should have put him on my left side. That way I can shield him from the fire. As ridiculous as that sounds, but my right side is my strong side. And I got a long ways to cover it. I got 200 plus pounds of man to carry. plus all my, and so while I'm doing this, it feels like, it sounds weird to say this. It feels like there's this force field around me. And the rounds are hitting all around me. And but Joe's not hit and I'm not getting hit. And then I start running. And of course, the first 25 yards or so, I'm doing pretty good. I'm pumped up with max adrenaline blast right now. I am max blast, right? And 25 turns into 50 yards. I got to go 150, 200 meters here. And the rounds are hitting all around me on the ground. I can look down and I see them. You can step on them. Bing, 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 skipping all around me. RPGs are flying by. They shot at least 2 RPGs at me. I said, oh, there was an RPG. There was another RPG. And Chucky had by this time has absconded with this vehicle. He's hijacked this vehicle. But it's far a good ways away. For me, it feels like it's a mile away. And I'm running. And I wrote in my book that I'm working on that I looked over into the edge of darkness. I looked over the edge and I saw death and darkness. It was a quote from the late Senator Bob Dole and what he had to endure with his wounds he served in World War II. Absolutely great American hero, former Senator Bob Dole, who I have the highest respect for. And I share that with you because I'm not comparing myself with him. I just had the greatest respect for Senator Dole. I'm not comparing myself to him or what he had to go through, but I can understand what he was seeing when he said he looked over the edge of death and he saw the darkness. So I'm running and none of these rounds are hitting me. And I'm like, I'm going to get hit any second. We're both going to go down hard and we're going to be screwed. And at that point in time, and I'm sure other vets have maybe talked about this, but I've never experienced anything before since this. This one was very personal to me. I talked about that earlier, about how some things are more personal than others. Mm. So I'm running out of steam. And I'm just saying, I just had unbelievable tunnel vision that we were going to make it to the vehicle. And that's the only thing that mattered. Nothing else mattered. And I say that when I say nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered. I was going to get Joe to that vehicle no matter what. And it was just going to effing happen. I mean, and I get about, I don't know, I'm about 25 meters from and I am just, I don't have anything left in me. And it's like I willed myself. Meanwhile, there's no way I get shot. I mean, all these bullets are hitting around them and they're pretty bad shots. Mm. And I'm having to move mostly perpendicular to the fire. I moved a little bit from it. There wasn't a lot of cover. And but we were a little bit farther away from them now. Thank goodness they're crappy shots. Shot more RPGs at us. They all went high, which is pretty normal. A lot of times they'll shoot the RPGs high. And I finally get in the vehicle. And I am just so, there's nothing left. I literally throw him on the hood of the vehicle. He screams out in pain. I'm completely cramped up. I can barely move. I can't even move my arms or my fingers. I'm like, my arm is like, I can't even move it. Mm-hmm. And Chucky helps me and we get Joe in the back of the vehicle. I'm still trying to get some sort of dressing on his arm. They're still shooting at us. We can't get the vehicle started. We have to get the driver back in the vehicle. There's a family that was in the vehicle and during the middle of the firefight, family's in this ditch next to the vehicle after we got hijacked the vehicle. And the guy goes, my money, my bags, and he points in the vehicle. In the middle of the firefight, after I got to go back to the vehicle, I start unloading these people's bags. I'm not kidding you. And I didn't have any handy cash on me. I was going to give them some money. I felt bad about that. And didn't know if I'm loading like Walmart bags or whatever it is, plastic bags and suitcase. I'm loading from the side of the vehicle. I'm like,
dude,
in the middle of firefight, because I felt bad for his family. And meanwhile, we're shooting through the windows and back on the other side. I'm yelling out RPG, and we need to get the hell out of here. We can't get the vehicle started. Have to get the driver back in the vehicle, and the driver starts Chucky's in the front seat, and the driver starts negotiating with Chucky for his watch. And so I'm like, we're screaming at him. We couldn't get it started. He had to hit this button, and whatever. It's just some crappy old SUV. Go, and gets it started,
Nice.
And he's pointing to Chucky's watch, and I said, Chucky,
just go.
Let me look at the watch. Take this, ripping the watch off, throws it at him, and off we tug off. Chugga. Couple more RPGs go, which they skip. Joe lives. Joe, I saw Joe 4 or 5 years. I saw Joe 3 or 4 months after that when I came back home. Walter Reed. Found him in the amputee ward. That's when things were just getting heated up, and in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially in Iraq. And so the young service members I saw were there with single, double, triple, in some cases quadruple amputees. It was very humbling. I didn't know Joe for that long. I'd only known Mayano just a short period of time. So I didn't really know him that well. I mean, you just get to know guys, but just. And I finally find him. It took me a while to find him. And he completely lost his arm. And he sees me. And so he hadn't been able to see any of the guys. He's gotten a couple emails, but he hadn't been able to see any of the other guys from his unit. So I was the first guy to see, and that happened October 31st, and this is like March. So it's some time later. March of the following year, And so we kind of have a moment there, and I find him in the physical therapy area, and there's like probably 100, 125 people in this room. All these wounded warriors are going through physical therapy. It's kind of loud. Joe and I unite. He's like, and he can't remember half of what went on, and I'm kind of filling in the blanks of what went on. And he gets up on the table, and he makes this announcement to the entire room. And he gets everybody's attention. There's like 100 people in this room. There's these boys. They're just boys. I mean, guys, missing the arms, the legs. You feel guilty walking out of that place. Because you had 2 legs. He goes, hey, I want to get everybody's attention. See this guy right here? This is Don. He's the only reason I'm here right now. He saved my ass. I want you guys to recognize him. And I felt like, Joe, please don't do this. Joe, just sit down. Don't do this. He goes, no, man. John pulled me out of the shit. Don pulled me out of the shit. That's it. And so, a couple people come up and shake my hand. And I feel like, I'm definitely not worthy of that praise. And I'm definitely not worthy of that praise in that room. That was, you live it, you see it, and you see, I see a triple amputee hobbling down the hallway on his crutches or whatever, a wheelchair, kid's 18 years old. Joe's like, oh man, I'm the lucky one. Guy loses his arm. He goes, this is the lucky one. He goes, one, I had you, points to me, and 2, I still got my legs. He's a big runner. He had this prosthetic arm.
That's resilience right there.
It really was. It's this cool prosthetic arm. He could turn his hand in like a 360. He goes, look at this, check this out.
You can't do that.
He goes, yeah, they let me go into a party the other day and I was freaking people out. Because he could hold the beer can and go like this. Upper body prosthetics are a lot more challenging, the lower body prosthetics, because the hand is one of them.
The hand movement. Oh.
This is 20 years ago. I said about 6 years later, 5-6 years later, I hooked up with Joe in Texas. He was still in the Army. He stayed in, even with his, he stayed in the Army. He's working with the ROTC unit. He had 2 more kids since then. So I think he has 4 kids.
That's great.
Yeah, met his young girls. They're all girls. And his wife. And he looks at his 2 youngest daughters and he goes, man, the only reason those 2 are alive is because of you, dude. And I'm like, yeah. Once again, I'm not worthy of that at all. I said, there's a lot of other reasons. And it's just not me. And, the medic that worked on Joe, Aaron Holloman, was killed almost exactly a year later. Or the OD medic that was with us at the time. He first worked on Joe, and I got Joe back to base. Aaron wasn't with us on the ambush, and then Aaron was killed there almost exactly a year later. And then we happened to have what they call dust off. The medevac birds happened to be sitting there at the base with us because we were co-located with the Army. Got him to Baghdad and got Joe taken care of. Forgot to save his arm. I apologized to him. I said, dude, I forgot to look for your arm. When Joe's arm got cut off, he had also taken off about 1.5 inches of his radial bone in his left forearm. And so his left arm he couldn't move it. It was just flesh because the bone right here, forearm was completely blown out by the same blast. And fortunately, the next day the bad guys hung Joe's arm up in the town square and said it was the arm of an infidel. And I apologized for him for not looking for his arm. He goes, man, it was in the middle of a firefight. I go, yeah, but I didn't even think about it. I mean, it sounds kind of stupid to talk about it, but because, they could use that to help him mend a little bit. But so I look at him, he says, I'm the luckiest man alive.
What an amazing person. Well, I mean, everyone has a story. This is yours. This is, important to contextualize what happened.
Yeah, kind of relate to it a little bit. So a little bit back on the Iraq piece, and I think I told you this when we were talking earlier, it was, so October 31st, 2003 has always been my second birthday.
Mm-hmm.
October 31st, 2003. So when I say it's my second birthday, I'll be 22 here.
It's your rebirth day.
Or if you want to call, I guess my second birthday. It's like, I shouldn't have lived past that day in some respects. That was something that was just, there's a lot of times in other bad situations, but that one was just, it's like I said before, maybe not the proper term, that was just a little more personal. And I can remember walking my daughter down the aisle at her wedding and being extremely emotional about doing so, because it was a great wedding. Everything was perfect. Daughter was marrying a fiance, her husband, Sam, great guy. He still is, awesome guy. She's the one that has the 4 kids now, 4 grandkids.
Made you a grandpa.
Being unbelievably emotional, not so much about that moment, but so much about how I almost missed this moment. And the guilt that I felt for something that didn't happen. I know it sounds stupid. I'm feeling guilty about something that didn't happen. I wasn't killed, so I feel guilty about that. But it just, that I almost wasn't there for that. And somebody else would have walked my daughter down the aisle. And, man, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It just really did. I mean, like, how do you rationalize that? Was I too selfish thinking about going to do this. Why did I put myself at make these type of risk? And my family's taking the same risks. It's a different type of risk, but it's like before when I was talking about the Gold Star families, those families pay that sacrifice every day because their husband or brother or son or whatever is not there. That's part of their life. And I almost did that to my children. I just sometimes, it's a weird thing to feel. That and survivor's guilt. I've had some of that over the years. Why me? Why did I live and this guy next to me did? If I'd have zigged, vice zagged, I'd be dead right now. Is there a bigger plan? Does God have a bigger plan for me? I mean, you don't have answers to those questions. Why? I be talking, the conversation started with the divine intervention. Whether those two moments in time were divine intervention, I'm absolutely convinced there was. They was, excuse me. But I don't know. Talked to that with some of my buddies. A couple guys that were there, a couple guys that could relate to it, could understand it. Happens to a lot of guys in the situation. I'm not any more different or any professional than anybody else. Those are just my experiences. And I've had others. There's no doubt. Had some run-ins with some bad guys in bad other areas, hand grenades coming over the wall, and that's not a good thing. Don't be within hand grenade range. And other small skirmishes and things that happen but those two divine intervention moments, I just can't explain it. I should not have made it out of there. And then you have those feelings of why me? Why did I survive? Somebody else didn't. And then I almost wasn't there. Almost, and my kids grew up without a dad. And it's weird to feel that, but I encourage other folks that are out there that, don't keep all this stuff in. It took me a few years. It took me about somewhere in the early 2010s, maybe around 2011. I'm not ashamed to say, I reached out and asked to talk to somebody about it. Somebody professional. I think that's important. This is actually, as I told you before, it's kind of medicinal for me. Every time I talk about some of these times, they're not easy to talk about, but it is easier to talk about every time, if that makes sense. But don't keep all these things balled up and say, oh man, I remember the first time I talked to somebody about it. A professional, very comfortable setting. It's like a 100-pound rucksack came off the back. Oh man. Wow.
Really?
Things came out of my mouth. I had no idea were there. Oh yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. Mostly you want to, especially if I can stereotype, men in general want to be very much in control of their emotions. They don't want to show a lot of emotion usually in public, and that's still pretty much the case with most of us. And I understand, and you want to be in what I call a fairly,
controlled environment.
Controlled environment. I guess that's what I'm looking for. But I encourage any other vets out there in any form, if stuff's still bothering you, talk to the professionals, talk to somebody, talk to a buddy. Don't let this stuff weigh you down. It will build up inside of you, and eventually it's got to come out, and make sure it just comes out in the right way. And we have a high veterans suicide rate that just shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that way. We need to help those folks, or anybody else that's experienced these type of, post-traumatic stress. I don't like the D part of it because I don't think it's a D disorder. Post-traumatic stress. I mean, you go through some of these types of things, and you don't have to be in combat to go through some of these, type of experiences. It can be a horrible car accident. It can be, things that just bad things that happen in people's lives. But talk to somebody about it. It does help. Okay, it helps. It's nice to know that what you're feeling and the emotions you're going through are, quote unquote, fairly normal, since you're a member of the human race, you know?
Yeah.
No, Don, and then maybe a little explanation of why you feel that way, even though sometimes you can't explain it. That was comforting to me. It was helpful. So I use myself as an example to anybody that reach out. To whoever you have to reach out to, and it helps. It helped me. It's helped most people I've talked to. I think it's most often when you're sitting around some of you guys, people that have been there, been similar type of experiences, whether it was Vietnam or, you know, whatever, or even Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, similar type of experiences. It helps because there's something that you can relate to in that, because you go, oh yeah, man, remember,
talk to your battle buddies.
That's how I felt when, you know, that freaking RPG came through the window, or whatever the case might be, you know.
Yeah.
It does help. He's like, oh, you felt the same way? Yeah. Did you feel this? Like, did you have like this enormous thirst right after? Oh man, I've just, you know, your way your body functions, the fight or flight reaction to things, how your training kicks in. Just, I mean, after the thing with Joe, I get back to the base. It's a little complicated, but we finally get him back, and the quick reaction force rolls out. We were able to quickly recover the rest of the team. I won't go into the details on that. So I'm walking over, trying to get in touch with one of the Army officers there to give him more of an update. And one of the young troopers there, a kid from the 10th Mountain, stops and says, hey, Don, get over here. Looks like you're hit. You're hit. Are you okay? And I'm like, I think I'm okay. And he goes, no, man, you're hit. And I'm like, I am? And I no, I'm not hit. He goes, dude, you're hit. Come over, let me check you out. And so I start kind of having this little argument with him. He says I'm hit, I've been hit with some sort of shrapnel or bullet wound, and I say I'm not. And then I start thinking, well, maybe I am. So he rips off all my stuff, and he's going over my body, and he goes, you're not hit. I go, I told you I wasn't hit. Well, and so I put my stuff on. I go back inside, and I finally go back in my hooch, and there's a mirror there, and I see myself, and I'm literally covered in blood. Literally everything. I'm just completely soaked, especially my right side. It's just all the way down. I can see why he thought I was something, because I'm covered in blood. It's like, and because I'm like, maybe I am hit. You know, you hear about guys getting shot and they don't even know about it. I always thought that was kind of humorous, because I'm arguing that I'm not. He's arguing that I am. You know, and I'm like, hey, I told you so. Where'd all the blood come from? It's Joe's blood. Oh, you gotta get chosen. So, and there's a pair of boots I have at home still. It still has some of Joe's blood on it. But you know, I could throw them away. And that was a good story that Joe lived.
He did. That's wonderful. And you received the intelligence.
So the awards come. Yeah, I received for the incident in Iraq. I received the Intelligence Cross.
Can you talk a little bit about those 39 people since the inception of the agency have received this?
It's the agency's highest award for heroism and valor. First of all, I didn't even know the thing existed until I got the darn thing. I do exist, but I never really focused on it. It's the agency's award for extreme heroism and valor. It's, like I said, I talked before about making sure that nobody makes any mistakes on the comparisons I make, but it's probably the CIA's version of like the Navy Cross, or, you know, I'm not going to say the Medal of Honor, but it's up there, okay? Distinguished Service Cross, something like that. As far as it's our version of that.
Well, you don't have to say Medal of Honor, but I will let everyone know that it's the equivalent of receiving a Medal of Honor in the agency.
Okay, so I And it just, they said, and when I told me I was going to get, I'm like, what am I going to get? What was that? I'm like, okay, do I just they're going to have some milk? No, they're going to have the ceremony. They're going to have a ceremony? I didn't know. And I don't think a lot of people focus on awards they get. I mean, but yeah, there's been 39 issued in the history of the organization. Most of them are, I think at least half of them were awarded posthumously. Means the recipient didn't live through the incident to receive the award. Their family received it. So, and then this is going back to the agency was founded to, obviously Korea, Vietnam, forward. So it's not something that's handed out every day. So there's only been 39. I feel enormous responsibility to, and the fact that I was that, and then in Afghanistan I was awarded the Intelligence Star, which is a step down for also, heroism and valor, price equivalent like the Silver Star or something like that. I don't know. I hate making those comparisons too much. So that puts you in a very unique group of people. I think what it's important is that most of these people never made it home. I think of Wayne Buckley as being one of them. He was kidnapped in the Middle East in the 70s and went through two torturers, killed by his captors. And there's other men and women that have been awarded the Intelligence Cross. So, and a lot of it are still classified, and every now and then they'll give another name. I think they recently just released a couple names. I think during this last May, during the memorial service, some folks that died way back in the 50s that were awarded the cross. You feel you really get the feeling, and you see it, in some of these movies, you see in some of these documentaries, you see the things you read where you'll see these recipients, and they are the last person in the world who believe they're ready to deserve an award as distinguished as that, or like some of these other awards that I talked about. And I can definitely understand why they feel that way. And we're not really big on displaying that stuff at the organization. Not like, the military guys all with the ribbons on their chest and stuff like that. Big ceremonies. The agency's, it's kind of like everything else. You kind of serve in silence. That's what we signed up for. But, you don't, I guess the point is that the real, and this is another cliche saying. I've said a lot of things that are very cliche this afternoon, but the real heroes are the guys and gals that didn't make it home. Those families that are still making those sacrifices today, because their loved one's not there with them, or their loved one is seriously injured or maimed or something like that, and they have to deal with that every day, and it's extremely difficult. I can't even begin to imagine. So awards or recognition is great. It's fine. But just keep it in perspective. Keep it in perspective. A lot of people out there, have you ever been in a national cemetery? Go to Arlington National anytime, visit, especially Section 60. Which is the section that has a lot of our Iraq and Afghan killed. Unfortunately, a number of us have friends and colleagues that are buried there. Those are the folks, those are the men and women that are really the true heroes here. For some reason, the man upstairs decided to, let me live through all of that. And I'm honored, but I'm the last one to tell you that, I'm just a regular guy doing a regular job. That's all I was. And anybody else in any of the folks I worked with were doing the exact same thing. It's just this, we were doing the exact same thing. And I would think what's most important is that we just remember those that never made it home.
Amen to that.
And, awards are what they are. It's unique in the standpoint a lot of people don't know about it, know about that particular, as it should be. The men and women at the organization, at the agency, they're really silent warriors. So a lot of today, everything that's happened in the world. Here we're coming off the heels of this big strike into Iran. B-2s and everything. What's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know, but we have agency officers are putting their lives on the line, and today, yesterday, and tomorrow. It's dangerous business. It's tough work. It's so tough. It's challenging. You have people that want to. When people make sure you don't succeed, you want people to want to kill you, or kill the union you're with. It's tough work, and people do this literally every day, in trying to collect the hard intelligence, especially the human intelligence that you always need. What's the term? Spying's a second oldest profession.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
I'll let people research what the first
oldest profession is. It's well chronicled. You go all the way back 100 years in history, but you can just go back to the Revolutionary War and George Washington and his reliance on his spy war, the spy ring. So it will always be there. You still need, even with all this technology and AI and ubiquitous technical surveillance and everything that you have with tech now, I can't even begin what it's going to be like 50 years from now, but you still need the guy or the gal that's, in the room or gets the document or has the access to the type of things that we need. You still need that individual.
So true. Yeah. It's like you can come up with incredible disguises. You can circumvent, CCTV or try to, become smarter in that space. But, I'd love to talk to you more about the role of determining intent. I don't think that's something that a computer can really do.
Yeah,
that's where you need the human intel side.
You do. AI is making some advances. I'm no expert in AI, but you're right. Intent is that's a tough one for a machine to do. Nothing replaces that human factor. It's also the gut instinct of certain things. You meet somebody for the first time, or something's off, but you can't with the individual you just met, and you just can't quite put your finger on it. And why are you feeling that way? Well, all these experiences you've had in your life, and this or that tells you that something might be off here. And how do you you may never find out the reason why, or you might find out very soon that was why you thought that way. We've all had those feelings about other people we met and the circumstances we're in, or it could just be a circumstance. You walk into a circumstance, a room, and something's not right here.
And you always want to trust your intuition, right? Listen, we're going to have to do a part 2. At some point.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Because we only scratched the surface on, Iraq, obviously Afghanistan. I definitely want to get into
Balkans.
We didn't even get into the Balkans.
That's one of the better ones. Yeah.
For real. And, we have to talk about your first most brave man that you've ever come across. Karzai was the second.
Yes, that's a good one. That's Mo. We'll just leave his name as Mo.
So to hear about Mo, you're going to have to tune into the second. But
absolutely. And then we didn't talk about the most important thing in the world to me are my grandkids.
Exactly. We have to do a part 2.
Okay.
But Don, the bravery that you did exhibit would be the heels of which you would eventually rise up to become the chief of ground branch.
Yeah, and I did some other things too. I'm not going to get into all the jobs that I had, but that was one of the pinnacles I had. There's other people that have been a lot more successful than I have at the organization. But that was quite the honor to do that, and it really just one of the tough job, difficult job, dynamic.
But you're a like natural born leader as well, and you in that role is very fitting. There's something I wanted to mention though about when you were talking about getting Joe to your destination with the vehicle. When you were talking about like being young and your dad instilling in you that like, I don't care how you get this done, but you're gonna get it done. And so there you are, there decades later finding yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get him to this.
I almost willed him there.
And
I don't know how to explain it. I just willed him there. It's just gonna happen, man. There's no stopping me.
But was it a visualization? Like, did you visualize like he's there, or
no? It was everything, just completely focused on that location, and I remember saying, I'm running. I got him on me, and I'm completely out of gas. I'm saying, I'm yelling a little bit of it. F it, we're going to make it. 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 I remember telling myself, I kept on saying verbally to myself, we're going to make it. We are going to make it. Man, you got to believe, you got to, see, I don't know why, but I just, we're going to make it. We are going to make it. Now, an instant later, I could have had my head blown off. I don't know. There's a certain amount of, that's part of, I talked about that was my second birthday, there's been a certain amount of, solace, peace that that particular incident has given me, that I never thought something like that would happen. And it's this is going to be weird to say, and especially weird to hear, but I'm absolutely convinced that I was supposed to leave this earth on that day. I was not going to, shouldn't have survived that moment, right? There are other moments, but that one in particular. And everything since has been a bonus. It really has. It's been almost 22 years of a bonus, and so you really truly have a better appreciation for everything. I mean, it took a little bit of time, but shortly after, man, nothing bothered me. It rolled off my back like water on a duck's back. I mean, and to a certain extent, you still have those little, stressors and stuff like that. Don't sweat the small stuff. And I have it puts me in I'm in a really good spot with the man upstairs, and wherever, however much longer my days are, I'm good with it, man. If I walk out that door today and get hit by a bus, it's okay. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. I don't know how to articulate it anywhere. There's just a peace that came with me. I don't know why it feels that way. It didn't happen overnight. It's just a peace. It comes with me. I don't know why I feel that way. It just does. I mean, I just feel like, okay, when it happens, it could be the day, it could be 20 years from now, I don't know. When my day comes, I'm perfectly fine with it. I feel sorry for my close, my people closest to me, but I do want to see my grandkids grow up. And by the way, I want to end this. It's one of my grandchildren, Rayland, Addison, Samuel, and Jackson. Samuel and Jackson are twins. They were born last October, twin boys. Rayland's 5 and Addie's almost 3. Rayland's almost 6 when I was thinking, my gosh. I told you before we started, my audience is 6 people.
Yeah.
Ali and Jayana, my $2, and my 4 grandkids. That's it. That's my audience. Outside of those 6 people, fine. Those are my audience. And maybe this is a little egotistical, but maybe someday when my grandchildren, who are just babies now, when they're old enough, 20 years from now, or I'm long gone or whatever, and they listen to their papa, that's my official grandfather name is Papa. Yeah. Say this was your grandfather.
Yeah.
In his words, and that, to me, that kind of inspired me to do a couple of these. They say the internet's forever, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's really my audience here. Maybe they'll learn something from it, take something away from it, have an appreciation for certain things in their life at that time when they hear this, when they're adults, old enough to appreciate it. I'm hoping they do. And that's really why I think in a way, and like I said, it's probably sounds a little egotistical. It's a way to memorialize a little bit of some of your experiences in my words and how I told it, as I remember them,
Yeah.
And even though some of these things are quite a few years old, that's really my true motivator for all this. It really is. It's really that simple when it comes to me. I'm writing some things down and working on my memoirs. Whether it gets published or not, I don't know, but that's the audience for it.
Well, that's very fitting because, my hope is that your grandchildren's generation and my children's generation will be able to learn from the leadership lessons of people that have lived incredible lives, purpose-driven lives. And I think that's where that content comes from for you, is that purpose. And, just really learn from the legacies of this human experience.
I hope so.
I'd love to know, in your role as a leader, but also having come across incredible leaders yourself, if you could share what makes a great human leader, in your opinion.
I would say when it comes to leadership, in my humble opinion, and you're leading either one other individual or a group of individuals, whatever circumstances it might be, absolutely nothing, and it is, once again, I'm going to use this term again, it's very cliche to say, but nothing replaces leadership by example. Absolutely nothing. Don't ask your men or the women that work for you, the people that work for you, to do anything that you yourself wouldn't do.
Mm.
You don't have to have all the technical capabilities and abilities to do everything that your people do. That's not some reason why you hire them. I understand that part of it. But don't ask them to do anything that you yourself wouldn't do. Set the example. And you set the example not only by your words, but by your actions. When you're in a position of responsibility, I don't care where you work, in the civilian world, government world, military world, whatever, and you're the boss, and you got 10 people that work for you, they're always, always, always watching you. They're always evaluating you. They're always waiting to say, oh, she tripped up there. What is she wearing today? Why is he wearing that? Why did he see? They're always, oh, he left early today. Why is that? They're always evaluating. You're always under that microscope. So you have to lead by example. You have to set the example, and your actions have to show your people that you're willing to lead by that same example. Without that, you lose zero credibility as a leader. I'm not talking about as a manager. That's different. Leadership and management are two different categories of things. Management is very important, but I always used to say you manage programs and you lead people. And most of us are still in the people business. And I've seen that, I found that to be the case in so many different environments and so many different circumstances, but absolutely leadership by example and by your actions.
Well, that's such incredible advice coming from a true leader. I appreciate that. And I always end the podcast with a question, which is, the term gray man. If you could go back and, in retrospect, knowing everything that you know now, would you want to be a gray man or not be a gray man? now that you've stepped out of the shadows.
Now that I stepped out of the shadows, and it was the challenges that I faced in the last 30 years or so, 40 years. I didn't think the agency was the last place in the world I ever thought I'd end up working. I wouldn't change anything. Now, everybody makes wrong decisions. You come to these Y's in the road, you zig vice you zag. I told you earlier when we were talking about, when I got offered to work at the agency when I was a police officer for a short time after I got out of the Marine Corps, I still think that's in my DNA.
Yeah.
Being a law enforcement. I missed that. I'm going to say past tense. I missed that. Always did. Always kind of thought that was my true calling in some respects. No, I wouldn't change a thing. Easy for me to say now. It's a lifestyle. It was an adventure. And sometimes there's more than what I signed up for. I'll tell you that right now. I'm like, wait a second, what the heck did I sign up for here? Am I really signed up for this? I wouldn't change a thing. I literally, truly mean this. When I retired a few years ago, I don't have any, I got very few regrets. I don't look back a lot. And I don't go back a lot. That's just my personality. I don't. I just don't. I can't control that anymore. I'm beyond. Let's learn from that, and hopefully it'll help me in my next whatever decision I got to make, whatever why in the road I'm going to come to. Whether people either you got to take a job, you're going to go to this school, you're going to marry this guy or gal, whatever the case might be. These life-changing events that will have a trickle down on your significant other, on the kids that you have or might have, and where they live. I mean, just these decisions that you made 30, 40, 50 years ago still have the impact on your children today because you decided to live here, vice there. You took this job, vice that job. No, I'm fine. I'm fine with being a gray man.
Would you want to go back into the shadows?
I have to say I do miss the people, and I do miss that. Especially in some of these far-off, austere locations, I do miss that aspect of things. It seems like in some of those conflict zones when I was in charge of here, in charge of there, that seemed to be that's really where I was that's my center cut, right? That's my prime.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, all those years of experience kind of build up to that. I really missed that. And then I look at the news and I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I'm retired. I mean, I gotta tell you, at 36, it turned out to be 36 years of between military and government service. And I'm ready to, tap out and say, okay, next generation, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Israel, whatever it might be. Yeah. I'm right here with you. I support you 1,000%. I still work a little bit in the community and teaching and instructing and consulting. So I have a give back through that. And I love working with the young people and doing that. But no, I'm kind of glad it's
nice.
I'm not going to say it's all of our problems, but it's their problem mainly to handle.
Right. Yeah. Every generation's got one, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge you for your leadership. You're so humble, but I feel so humbled to be sitting here with you. And
well, thank you. I
appreciate
these opportunities.
Of course.
Fantastic. This was the Medal for Career Achievement you got when I retired. This was the medallion for the Intelligence Cross. That's the right up for it. Then this was the Intelligence Star, depicted by the star, and the cross right here.